The courthouse smelled of old wood polish and broken dreams. I stood before the full-length mirror in the sterile women's restroom, staring at a stranger. The woman looking back wore a cream silk dress. Designer, probably worth more than my entire year's salary as a kindergarten teacher. Her auburn hair had been professionally styled into soft waves that cascaded over bare shoulders. Diamond studs glinted at her ears, borrowed from someone's safe for the occasion. She looked like she belonged in the pages of a bridal magazine. She didn't look like me at all. My hands trembled as I smoothed the dress for the 100th time, the fabric whispering against my palms. In 3 minutes I would walk down a hallway. Not an aisle, there would be no aisle, no flowers, no music, and marry a man I'd met exactly twice. A man whose last name I would take, whose bed I would share, whose life would become inextricably tangled with mine for reasons that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with survival. The door opened behind me, and my sister Olivia appeared in the mirror. Her face a careful mask of encouragement that didn't quite hide the worry in her green eyes. "It's time," she said softly, reaching out to adjust a curl that had fallen across my cheek. "Are you sure about this, Claire? We could still." "We can't." I cut her off gently but firmly, turning to face her. "You know we can't. The medical bills alone. I could take out more loans, get a second job. We could live." I grasped her hands, squeezing tightly. "Mom needs that clinical trial. It's her only chance. And the trial costs $200,000 that we don't have and never will have." My voice cracked slightly. "He's offering to pay for everything. All of it. Her treatment, your graduate school tuition, the mortgage on the house. Everything. In exchange for you." Olivia's voice was thick with barely suppressed tears. "Like some kind of medieval transaction. Claire, you're worth more than. I'm worth exactly what someone is willing to pay." The bitterness in my tone surprised us both. I softened it with a weak smile. "Besides, it's not forever. 2 years. The contract is very specific. 2 years of marriage and then we both walk away. Mom gets her treatment. You finish your doctorate. And I trailed off, not quite sure how to finish that sentence. "And I get 2 years with a man who looks at me like I'm a business acquisition. 2 years playing house in some mansion I've never seen. 2 years pretending to be something I'm not for people I don't know. 2 years that might save my mother's life." "He seems nice enough," Olivia offered weakly, though we both knew it was a lie. Sebastian Thornwood didn't seem nice. He seemed cold, calculating, devastatingly handsome in that sharp-edged way that warned you not to get too close, like a beautifully crafted knife. I'd researched him, of course, after our first meeting. The internet had plenty to say about Sebastian Thornwood, youngest CEO in his family's investment empire's history, brilliant strategist, ruthless negotiator, heir to a fortune that spanned continents. There were photos of him at charity galas with different women on his arm. Always beautiful, always elegant, never the same one twice. There were articles about his business deals, his philanthropy, his rumored political ambitions. There was nothing about why a man like that would need to arrange a marriage with a struggling elementary school teacher from Queens. Our second meeting had been in his lawyer's office, where I'd signed document after document while Sebastian sat across the mahogany table, silent and inscrutable. The prenuptial agreement alone had been 30 pages. I tried to read it carefully, but the legalese had blurred together. Clauses about separate residences and public appearances and discretion and grounds for early termination that had made my head spin. "Do you have any questions, Miss Fitzgerald?" the lawyer had asked, not unkindly. I'd had 1,000 questions. Why me? What does he really want? What happens if I can't do this? What happens if I fall in love with him? What happens if he breaks my heart? Instead, I'd asked, "When does my mother's first payment go through?" "The moment you sign the marriage certificate," Sebastian had answered, his voice like expensive whiskey, smooth and burning. As promised. Now, standing in this courthouse bathroom with my sister's hands in mine, that promise was about to become reality. A sharp knock on the door made us both jump. "Miss Fitzgerald." A woman's voice, professional and slightly impatient. "They're ready for you." This was it. The point of no return. Olivia pulled me into a fierce hug, her voice a whisper against my ear. "You call me. Anytime, day or night. If you need anything, if you want out." "I know." I hugged her back just as tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender shampoo, trying to memorize this moment. The last moment I would be just Claire Fitzgerald, kindergarten teacher, daughter, sister. In a few minutes, I would be Claire Thornwood. Wait, something else entirely. We broke apart, and Olivia wiped quickly at her eyes, her smile wobbly but determined. "At least you'll have an amazing story for your future real wedding." I laughed, though it came out more like a sob. Always the optimist. "Someone has to be." She squeezed my hand one last time. "I'll be right there. Front row. Such as it is." She slipped out, leaving me alone with my reflection once more. I took a deep breath, then another. Straightened my shoulders. Lifted my chin. Could do this. I would do this. For Mum. For Olivia. For our family. The woman in the mirror looked back at me, beautiful and terrified and determined. "Okay," I whispered to her. "Let's go get married." The hallway to the judge's chambers was exactly as soulless as I'd imagined. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, the muffled sounds of other people's legal proceedings happening behind closed doors. My heels clicked against the linoleum, each step an echo of finality. Sebastian was waiting outside the chambers, and my breath caught despite myself. He wore a charcoal suit that had definitely been tailored specifically for his tall, broad-shouldered frame. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw freshly shaven. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Forbes cover shoot, powerful, untouchable, and so far out of my league we might as well be playing different sports. His ice blue eyes tracked my approach, and something flickered across his face too quickly for me to identify. Not quite approval, but not indifference either. Something else. Something that made my pulse quicken in a way I absolutely did not want to examine. "Claire." He said my name like he was testing the weight of it. "You look." He paused, and I braced myself for whatever clinical observation he was about to make. "Beautiful." The word hung between us, unexpected and somehow more intimate than it should have been. I felt heat creep up my neck. "Thank you." I managed to keep my voice steady. "You clean up well yourself." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close enough to suggest he had a sense of humor buried somewhere under all that ice. "Shall we?" He offered his arm, the gesture oddly old-fashioned and courteous. After a moment's hesitation, I took it, my hand settling into the crook of his elbow. Even through the expensive fabric of his suit, I could feel the warmth of him, the solid strength. We entered the chambers together. The room was small and impersonal. A desk, some chairs, law books lining the walls, an American flag in the corner. Judge Morrison, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, sat behind the desk reviewing paperwork. Sebastian's lawyer, Gerald, stood to one side. Olivia was already seated in one of the witness chairs, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The only other person present was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, with sandy blonde hair and an easy smile that seemed out of place in the solemnity of the moment. He stepped forward as we entered, extending his hand first to me. "You must be Claire. I'm James Thornwood, Sebastian's brother. Congratulations." "Thank you." I shook his hand, caught off guard by the genuine warmth in his greeting. He looked like a friendlier, more approachable version of Sebastian. Same height, similar features, but where Sebastian was all sharp edges and icy control, James radiated affability. "Glad someone in this family knows how to smile," James murmured conspiratorially, just loud enough for me to hear. "Welcome to the Thornwoods. We're not all terrifying, I promise." "James." Sebastian's tone held a warning. Right. Solemn occasion. No jokes." But James winked at me before moving to take his seat beside Olivia. Judge Morrison looked up, her sharp gaze moving between Sebastian and me. "Are we ready to proceed?" Sebastian glanced down at me, and for just a moment, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Claire, was a question. An out perhaps if I wanted it. Even now, at this final moment, he was giving me a choice. I thought of my mother in her hospital bed, growing weaker by the day. I thought of Olivia's dreams of becoming a professor, dreams she'd sacrifice in a heartbeat to take care of our family. I thought of our childhood home, the place where Dad had taught me to ride a bike and Mom had baked cookies every Sunday, at risk of foreclosure. Thought of 2 years. Just 2 years. "I'm ready," I said, and was proud that my voice didn't shake. Judge Morrison nodded and gestured for us to stand before her desk. Sebastian and I positioned ourselves side by side, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. I could smell his cologne now, something expensive and woodsy with notes of cedar and leather. "We're here today for the civil marriage of Sebastian James Thornwood and Claire Elizabeth Fitzgerald." Judge Morrison's voice was brisk and businesslike. "Before we proceed, I need to confirm that both parties are entering into this union of their own free will, without coercion, and with full understanding of the legal obligations involved." Free will. The phrase echoed in my head. Was this free will when the alternative was watching my mother die? When my sister would have to give up everything she'd worked for? Was it a choice if saying no meant losing everything? "Mr. Thornwood, do you enter into this marriage freely and willingly?" "I do." Sebastian's voice was steady, certain, as if this were just another business deal he was closing. "Miss Fitzgerald, do you enter into this marriage freely and willingly?" I opened my mouth, closed it, felt Sebastian shift slightly beside me, some tension entering his frame. Olivia was crying quietly in her chair. James watched with an expression I couldn't quite read. This was my last chance. I could walk away right now. Sebastian would honor his word. He'd said as much in our first meeting. "If at any point before the ceremony you change your mind, Miss Fitzgerald, there will be no consequences. The offer simply dissolves. But after the ceremony, I would be bound. For 2 years, I would be Mrs. Claire Thornwood." "I do," I whispered. "I need you to speak up, Miss Fitzgerald." "I do." Louder this time. Firmer. A lie and a truth all at once. Judge Morrison nodded, satisfied. "Very well. Do you have rings?" Sebastian reached into his pocket and produced 2 velvet boxes. When had he gotten rings? This was supposed to be a simple contract, a legal formality. But he opened the first box to reveal a wedding band of platinum and diamonds that caught the fluorescent light and shattered it into rainbows. He took my left hand, his fingers warm and sure, and slid the ring onto my finger. Fit perfectly, of course. He'd probably had my ring size investigated along with everything else about me. "With this ring I thee wed," he said, the traditional words sounding strange in his formal businesslike tone. I took the second ring from its box with trembling fingers, a simple platinum band, elegant and understated. Sebastian's hand was steady as I slipped it onto his finger, the metal warm from being in his pocket. "With this ring I thee wed," I echoed, and tried not to think about how final it sounded. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York," Judge Morrison intoned, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." She paused, something almost apologetic crossing her stern features. "You may kiss the bride." My eyes flew to Sebastian's. We hadn't discussed this. Hadn't planned for it. In all the contracts and negotiations and arrangements, somehow we'd both assumed this part would be skipped in a courthouse ceremony. But Sebastian was already moving, one hand coming up to cup my jaw with surprising gentleness. He leaned down. He was so much taller than me, I had to tilt my head back, and his lips brushed mine. It wasn't a passionate kiss. Wasn't even a romantic one, really. Just a brief press of mouth against mouth, fulfilling an obligation, sealing a deal. But something sparked anyway. Some current that ran from his lips to mine and straight down to my toes. His thumb stroked once across my cheekbone, and my breath hitched. Then it was over. He pulled back, his expression unreadable once more, though his pupils were slightly dilated. "Congratulations," Judge Morrison said, already reaching for the marriage certificate. "Sign here, please." The paperwork was mechanical. Signatures and witnesses and official stamps. My hand shook slightly as I wrote Claire Thornwood for the first time, the name looking foreign and strange in my own handwriting. When it was done, when the certificate was signed and sealed and official, Sebastian turned to me and offered his arm again. "Ready, Mrs. Thornwood." Mrs. Thornwood. I was Mrs. Thornwood now. "As I'll ever be, Mr. Thornwood." We walked out of the courthouse together into brilliant afternoon sunshine. A black car was waiting at the curb. Not a limo, thankfully, but still clearly expensive. A driver in a dark suit stood ready to open the door. Olivia rushed forward, hugging me tightly one more time. "Call me tonight," she whispered. "Promise." "I promise." James shook Sebastian's hand, clapped him on the shoulder, then surprised me by pulling me into a brief, friendly hug. "Seriously, welcome to the family. And if he gives you any trouble," he raised his voice slightly, making sure Sebastian could hear, "you just let me know. I'll keep that in mind." Sebastian's hand settled at the small of my back, warm through the thin silk of my dress, as he guided me toward the waiting car. The driver opened the door, and I slid into the leather interior, Sebastian following. The door closed with a soft, expensive thunk, sealing us inside together. Alone together for the first time as husband and wife. The car pulled away from the curb, and I watched through the tinted windows as Olivia and James grew smaller, the courthouse receding into the distance. My old life falling away. "Your mother's first treatment payment has already been transferred," Sebastian said quietly, breaking the silence. "The hospital administrator called while we were inside. She's been approved for the clinical trial. They start next week." Relief crashed over me so powerfully I had to close my eyes against the sudden sting of tears. "Thank you." "You don't need to thank me. We had an agreement." I opened my eyes to find him watching me with that same unreadable expression. "Where are we going?" "Home." He said it simply, as if it were obvious. "Our home. I thought you might want to settle in before dinner." Home. The reality of it hit me all at once. I would be living with this man, sharing a space with him, waking up under the same roof. For 2 years. "I packed a bag," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "It's at Olivia's. Just some basics. I didn't know what I'd need." "It's already been taken care of." Sebastian's tone was matter-of-fact. "Your belongings were moved to the estate this morning. Additional items have been purchased to supplement your wardrobe. If there's anything else you require, simply let Mrs. Chen know. She's the house manager." I stared at him. "You moved my things. Without asking." "We discussed this in the contract, Claire. Clause 14. Both parties agree to reside primarily at the Thornwood estate for the duration of the marriage." "I know what the contract says. But my things." I broke off, trying to control the surge of panic rising in my chest. Strangers had been in my apartment, packing up my life, moving it to some place I'd never seen. "You could have asked. Could have let me do it myself. You were busy preparing for the wedding." His brow furrowed slightly, as if genuinely confused by my reaction. "I was attempting to make the transition easier. By taking away my choices." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite regret, but a flicker of understanding. "I apologize. That wasn't my intention." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I'd expected arrogance, not an apology. "I'm not used to this," I admitted quietly, looking down at the rings on my left hand. The diamonds sparkled accusingly. "Any of this. I don't know how to be what you need me to be, Claire." He waited until I looked up, meeting his ice-blue gaze. "I don't need you to be anything other than yourself. That's why I chose you." "Why did you choose me?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "You could have arranged this with anyone. Someone from your world. Someone who understands all this. Why a kindergarten teacher from Queens?" Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. his gaze fixed on something beyond the tinted windows. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, almost reflective. I attended a charity benefit 8 months ago. One of those insufferable galas where everyone pretends to care about education while writing tax-deductible checks. Your school's principal was there, advocating for funding. She brought photographs of her students, talked about dedicated teachers going above and beyond. He paused. She mentioned you specifically. The teacher who spent her own money on supplies, who stayed late every day tutoring struggling students, who organized a winter coat drive that clothed half the neighborhood. I remembered Mrs. Henderson going to that benefit. Remembered helping her prepare her presentation, never dreaming anyone would actually listen. I had you investigated, Sebastian continued, his tone almost apologetic. Thoroughly. I learned about your mother's illness, your sister's academic achievements, your father's death 3 years ago, the medical debt, the second mortgage on your childhood home. His eyes met mine again. I learned that you were someone who sacrificed everything for the people you love. Someone loyal. Someone real, in a world where everyone I know is performing a part. So you targeted me. Should have made me angry. Instead, I felt something more complicated. I offered you a solution, he corrected gently. A transaction that would benefit us both. And what do you get out of this? Yes. What's your benefit, Sebastian? You still haven't told me. The car slowed, turning through ornate iron gates I hadn't even noticed approaching. Sebastian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Let's save that conversation for after you've seen your new home, he said. Some explanations require context. The car proceeded up a winding drive lined with old-growth trees, their branches creating a canopy overhead. Through gaps in the foliage, I caught glimpses of manicured gardens, a fountain, stone pathways. My heart hammered against my ribs. Then the trees parted and I saw it. The Thornwood estate wasn't just a house. It was a statement. A sprawling mansion of pale stone and endless windows, 3 stories at least, with wings extending in both directions. Ivy climbed the walls in careful patterns. A circular drive curved around a fountain where stone dolphins played in crystalline water. It was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in movies. Old money. Real wealth. The kind that didn't need to show off because everyone already knew. This is where you live, I whispered. This is where we live, Sebastian corrected. As of today. The car stopped at the main entrance, where a woman in her 50s waited, her posture perfect, her expression warmly professional. The driver opened my door, and Sebastian exited on his side, coming around to offer me his hand. I took it, my legs unsteady as I stepped out into my new life. Mrs. Thornwood, the waiting woman said, and it took me a moment to realize she was addressing me. Welcome home. I'm Mrs. Chen, the house manager. If you need anything at all during your time here, please don't hesitate to ask. During your time here. Not forever. Not permanently. A reminder that this was temporary. 2 years. Thank you, I managed. Mrs. Chen, please show Claire to her rooms, Sebastian said. I have some business to attend to before dinner. Her rooms. Not our rooms. Separate spaces, then. Which shouldn't have been a relief, but was. Of course, sir. Mrs. Chen gestured toward the entrance. If you'll follow me, Mrs. Thornwood. I glanced back at Sebastian, who was already speaking quietly on his phone. His attention elsewhere. Dismissed. Already forgotten, perhaps. I followed Mrs. Chen through doors that were probably older than my grandparents', into a world I didn't belong in and would never truly be part of. Welcome home, she'd said. But as the massive doors closed behind me with a sound like a prison gate locking, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just traded one cage for another. No matter how beautifully gilded this one might be. Chapter 1. My rooms, and Mrs. Chen had been very deliberate in using the plural, occupied an entire wing on the 2nd floor. She led me through hallways lined with oil paintings of stern-faced Thornwoods from centuries past, their eyes seeming to follow my progress with aristocratic disapproval. The carpet beneath my feet was so plush it swallowed the sound of our footsteps. Everything smelled of lemon polish and old money. "The East Wing has been prepared specifically for you," Mrs. Chen explained as we walked, her tone warmly professional. "Mr. Thornwood felt you should have your own space. Privacy is important in any marriage." Privacy. What a polite way of saying we'd be living separate lives under the same roof. She opened a set of double doors, and I stepped into what could only be described as a luxury hotel suite. The sitting room alone was larger than my entire apartment had been, decorated in soft creams and golds with furniture that looked antique and probably cost more than a car. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens. Fresh flowers, white roses and peonies, filled crystal vases on every surface. "Your bedroom is through here," Mrs. Chen continued, leading me through another doorway. The bedroom was dominated by a four-poster bed that could have comfortably slept 4 people, dressed in silk linens the color of champagne. More French doors led to the same balcony. A fireplace sat cold and empty against one wall, flanked by built-in bookshelves. "Your closet and dressing room." Mrs. Chen opened yet another door, revealing a space that made my jaw drop. It wasn't a closet. It was a boutique. Racks of clothing lined the walls, dresses, blouses, pants, coats, all in my size, all with designer labels I recognized from magazines but had never imagined wearing. Shelves displayed shoes arranged by color and style. Drawers that Mrs. Chen opened briefly revealed silk lingerie and cashmere sweaters. "Mr. Thornwood had his personal shopper curate a wardrobe suitable for your new position," she said. "If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, simply let me know and we'll arrange replacements." I reached out to touch a jade green dress, the fabric like water under my fingers. "This must have cost." Mr. Thornwood was quite specific about ensuring you had everything you needed. Mrs. Chen's tone suggested this wasn't unusual. Perhaps for people like Sebastian, spending what was probably $50,000 on clothes for a contract wife was just another Tuesday. "And the bathroom is here." She opened the final door. Marble and glass and gleaming fixtures. A soaking tub that could have been a small pool. A shower with multiple heads and controls that looked like they required an engineering degree. Heated floors. A vanity with lighting that would make a Broadway makeup artist weep with envy. "Your belongings from your apartment have been unpacked and integrated with the new items," Mrs. Chen continued. "I took the liberty of placing your personal photographs and mementos on the bookshelves in the sitting room. I thought you might want familiar items nearby." Something in my chest eased slightly. At least she understood that I might need something of my own in all this overwhelming luxury. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That was thoughtful." She smiled, the professional warmth becoming something more genuine. "I've worked for the Thornwood family for 23 years, Mrs. Thornwood. I've seen many changes in this house. But I've never seen Mr. Sebastian quite so particular about ensuring someone's comfort." I didn't know what to say to that, so I simply nodded. "Dinner is served at 7 in the small dining room. I'll have someone collect you at 1:45. Mr. Thornwood typically dresses for dinner, though nothing too formal during the week." He paused at the door. "Is there anything else you need right now?" What I needed was to wake up from this bizarre dream where I lived in a mansion and had a closet full of designer clothes and a husband who'd married me for reasons I still didn't understand. "No, thank you. I think I just need some time to process." "Of course. I'll leave you to settle in." She pulled the door closed behind her with a soft click. Alone, I stood in the center of my new sitting room and slowly turned in a circle, trying to comprehend that this was now my life. My temporary life, I reminded myself. 2 years. Then I'd go back to being just Claire Fitzgerald, kindergarten teacher. And this would all become a surreal memory. I walked to the French doors and stepped out onto the balcony. The gardens stretched below, perfectly manicured, with stone pathways winding between flower beds and ornamental shrubs. In the distance, I could see what looked like a tennis court, a pool house, and beyond that, the estate walls marking the boundary of the property. My phone buzzed in my purse, one of the few personal items I'd brought with me to the courthouse. I pulled it out to find 3 messages from Olivia. Are you okay? Is the house as intimidating as I'm imagining? Call me when you can. Need to know you're alive. I hit the call button and she answered on the first ring. Claire. Oh my God, I've been going crazy. What's it like? Is he being nice? Do you have your own room? Live, breathe. I laughed despite everything. I'm fine. The house is... It's a lot. Think Downton Abbey but modern and in New York. And yes, I have my own room. My own wing, actually. Wing. Like multiple rooms. Sitting room, bedroom, closet the size of our entire apartment, bathroom that belongs in a spa. I sank into one of the balcony chairs. Elegant wrought iron with plush cushions. There are fresh flowers everywhere and a wardrobe full of designer clothes that appeared out of nowhere and, Liv, I don't belong here. Did he say something? Is he being awful? No, that's the weird part. He's been courteous. Apologized when I got upset about him moving my stuff without asking. But it's like he's already forgotten about me. We got here, and he immediately disappeared to handle business. I made air quotes even though she couldn't see them. So you're living in a mansion with a hot billionaire husband who bought you a designer wardrobe and gave you your own wing of the house. And you're complaining? Olivia's tone was teasing but gentle. Claire, I know this isn't a fairy tale. I know it's weird and arranged and temporary. But maybe try to enjoy the parts that are enjoyable. You've been so stressed for so long. You deserve some luxury. Luxury I'm being paid to accept. Luxury you earned by being willing to sacrifice your own happiness for Mom and me. Her voice grew fiercer. Stop acting like you don't deserve good things, Claire. You do. Even if the circumstances are bizarre. I was saved from having to respond by a soft knock on the door. Liv, I have to go. Someone's here. Okay. But call me tomorrow. And every day. I need sister check-ins. I promise. Love you. Love you too. And Claire. Try to breathe. It's going to be okay. I ended the call and crossed to the door, opening it to find a young woman in a simple black dress holding a garment bag. Mrs. Thornwood. I'm Anna, one of the house staff. Mrs. Chen asked me to bring you something appropriate for dinner. She held out the garment bag. And to let you know that Mr. Thornwood would like to speak with you before dinner, if that's convenient. He's in his study. Oh, course. Where is? I'll show you, ma'am. Shall I help you change first? 10 minutes later, I traded my cream courthouse dress for a simple navy sheath that somehow managed to make me look elegant without being overdressed. Anna had offered to do my hair, but I declined, settling for touching up my makeup and smoothing down the waves that were already starting to fall. She led me back through the maze of hallways, down a grand staircase to the first floor, through what she identified as the main drawing room and the library, until we reached a heavy oak door at the end of a quieter corridor. Mr. Thornwood's private study, Anna said. Just knock. She disappeared before I could thank her, leaving me alone in front of the door. I took a breath and knocked. Come in. I pushed the door open and stepped into what was clearly Sebastian's domain. Unlike the rest of the house, which felt like it had been decorated by a professional to impress visitors, this room felt lived in, personal. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, crammed with volumes that showed signs of actual reading. Cracked spines, dog-eared pages, bookmarks protruding at various intervals. A massive desk sat before tall windows overlooking a different section of the gardens, its surface scattered with papers and files and an open laptop. Sebastian stood at one of the bookshelves, still in his suit but with his jacket discarded and his tie loosened. He'd rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk all day. He turned as I entered, and something in his expression shifted when he saw me, went from distracted to focused with unsettling intensity. Claire, thank you for coming. He gestured to a leather sofa arranged before an unlit fireplace. Please sit. Would you like something to drink? No, thank you. I perched on the edge of the sofa, my hands folded in my lap like a nervous student called to the principal's office. Sebastian poured himself 2 fingers of amber liquid from a crystal decanter, whiskey probably, and settled into the armchair across from me. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, the silence stretching uncomfortably. "I owe you an explanation," he finally said. "Several, actually." That almost smile flickered across his face again. "Fair enough. Where would you like me to start?" "Why?" The question burst out. "Why this? Why marry a stranger when you could have anyone? What do you really get out of this arrangement?" Sebastian took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving mine. When he spoke, his voice was measured, each word chosen carefully. "My grandfather established a trust when I was born. A substantial trust. Several $1 billion in various assets and investments. But he had particular ideas about family legacy and responsibility. I waited, sensing there was more. The terms of the trust state that I cannot access the principal until I'm married and have been so for a minimum of 2 years." He set his glass down with deliberate care. "I turned 35 last month. If I don't fulfill the marriage requirement by my 36th birthday, the entire trust reverts to a consortium of charities. That's..." I struggled to process this. "That's insane. Your grandfather made your inheritance contingent on being married." He believed that marriage demonstrated maturity and responsibility, that a man who committed to a wife and potentially a family would make wiser financial decisions than a bachelor. Sebastian's tone was dry. He was somewhat old-fashioned in his views. "So you needed a wife. Any wife." The pieces were clicking together now. "But why not just marry someone from your world? Surely there are women who would have jumped at the chance." "There are." His gaze was steady, unreadable. "Women who would want the title, the lifestyle, the social position. Women who would make demands, have expectations, want things I can't give them." "Like what?" "Like a real marriage. Emotional intimacy. Love." He said the word like it was foreign to him. "I don't have the capacity for those things, Claire. I'm not built that way. My business requires complete focus, absolute dedication. I can't afford distractions or emotional entanglements." Something cold settled in my stomach. "So you found someone desperate enough to accept a business transaction instead?" "I found someone who needed something I could provide, in exchange for something I needed from them." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I won't lie to you and claim this is romantic or even particularly fair to you. But I will be honest. I need a wife for 2 years to access my inheritance. You needed funds to save your mother and support your family. We're both getting exactly what we need from this arrangement. And after 2 years. After 2 years, we divorce quietly and amicably. You'll receive a settlement as outlined in the prenuptial agreement, enough to ensure you and your family are comfortable for the rest of your lives. You'll be free to live however you choose." I stood, too agitated to sit, and walked to the window. The gardens were bathed in golden late afternoon light, beautiful and serene. A gilded cage, I'd thought earlier, and that was exactly what this was. "What do you expect from me during these 2 years?" I asked without turning around. "Public appearances as needed. Certain social events require a spouse, charity galas, business dinners, family functions. You'll need to play the role of my wife convincingly in those settings. And in private, in private, you're free to live your life as you see fit. We'll maintain separate quarters." "I don't expect." He trailed off, and I turned to find him looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. "I don't expect conjugal rights if that's your concern. This is a business arrangement, not a real marriage." Relief and something else, something I didn't want to examine too closely, warred in my chest. "So we're roommates who sometimes pretend to be married in public?" "Essentially, yes." "And what if I meet someone during these 2 years?" The question surprised even me. Sebastian's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "The prenuptial agreement includes a morality clause. Any infidelity on either part results in immediate termination of the contract and forfeiture of all financial arrangements. So I'm supposed to be celibate for 2 years. I'm expected to maintain the same standard. His tone was clipped now. It's not unreasonable to expect fidelity in a marriage, even one of convenience. Except this isn't a real marriage. I turned back to the window, my reflection ghostly in the glass. It's a performance. A 2-year-long lie. Yes. His honesty shouldn't have stung, but it did. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, Claire. I'm not capable of giving you the romance or passion or whatever it is people expect from marriage. I can give you financial security, protection, and honesty. That's the extent of what I have to offer. I watched the sun sink lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In a few hours it would be dark, and I would sit down to dinner with my husband who wasn't really my husband at all. Tomorrow I would wake up in a room that wasn't mine, in a house that would never be home, living a life that was just an elaborate pretense. But my mother would live. Olivia would finish her doctorate. Our childhood home would be safe. Okay, I said quietly. Okay. I turned to face him. I understand the terms. I'll play my part. But I have some conditions of my own. Sebastian's eyebrows rose slightly. Surprise, perhaps, that I was negotiating. I'm listening. I want to keep teaching. Part-time at least. I don't care if that's not what wives in your social circle do. It's important to me. He nodded slowly. That can be arranged. What else? Weekly visits with my mother and sister. Unmonitored, without staff hovering. They're my family, and I won't give them up. Of course. I would never ask you to. And I want honesty. If this arrangement isn't working for you, if I'm not playing the part well enough, I need you to tell me. Don't just quietly resent me for 2 years. I can't fix problems I don't know about. Something flickered in Sebastian's eyes. Respect, maybe. I can agree to that. Anything else? I thought about it, trying to imagine the next 2 years, trying to anticipate what I might need to survive this with my sanity intact. I want my own space respected. You don't come into my rooms without permission. I don't go into yours. We're not a real couple, so we don't get to act like one when it's convenient. Agreed. He stood, moving to the decanter to refill his glass. For what it's worth, Claire, I meant what I said at the courthouse. I don't need you to be anything other than yourself. You don't have to perform for me in private. Just in public. Just in public. He raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. Shall we consider this our first negotiation successfully completed? I suppose so. A knock on the door interrupted us. Mrs. Chen's voice called through. Mr. Thornwood? Dinner is ready to be served. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Sebastian set down his glass and reached for his jacket, shrugging it on with practiced ease. He reknotted his tie with quick, efficient movements, transforming from slightly disheveled to immaculate in seconds. He offered me his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. One more thing, I said as he led me toward the door. Yes. Your family. Your brother seemed nice at the courthouse, but what about the rest of them? Do they know this is an arrangement? Sebastian's jaw tightened. James knows. He's trustworthy and didn't approve of the plan, but he'll keep the secret. My mother knows I was required to marry for the trust. She doesn't know the specifics of our arrangement, and it's better if she doesn't. She'll likely have opinions about our marriage regardless. And your father? My father passed away 10 years ago. His tone was flat, emotionless. It's just my mother and James, along with various aunts, uncles, and cousins who will all be far too interested in our marriage for comfort. But we'll manage them together. Together. As if we were a team. Maybe, in a strange way, we were. 2 people bound by contract and necessity, playing parts in a drama neither of us had particularly wanted but both of us needed. Sebastian opened the study door, and we stepped into the hallway. The small dining room is this way. As we walk through the house, my house now at least temporarily, I caught glimpses of staff members discreetly straightening items or moving through doorways. They all averted their eyes carefully, and I wondered if they knew the truth about our marriage, or if they simply assumed I was another trophy wife for a wealthy man. The small dining room, which was still larger than my entire childhood kitchen, had been set with fine china and crystal. Candles flickered on the table, and someone had arranged more fresh flowers as a centerpiece. It was all very romantic, which made the reality of our situation feel even more absurd. Sebastian held out my chair and I sat, letting him push it in with old-fashioned courtesy. He took his seat at the head of the table, which put several feet of polished mahogany between us. A server appeared immediately, pouring wine and presenting the first course, some kind of delicate seafood preparation that looked like art on a plate. "Mrs. Chen tells me you're vegetarian," Sebastian said, picking up his fork. "The kitchen has been instructed accordingly." I blinked. "How did you?" "It was in the background report." He said it casually, as if having a dossier compiled on his future wife was perfectly normal. "Along with your food allergies, shellfish and tree nuts, and your preference for tea over coffee in the morning. You had me investigated that thoroughly. I make it a point to know everything relevant about the people I do business with." He paused, seeming to realize how that sounded. "That came out wrong. I simply meant that I wanted to ensure your comfort. If I'm going to ask you to live here for 2 years, the least I can do is make sure you're not served things you can't eat." It was thoughtful, in a clinical, slightly creepy way. Like being married to a very efficient robot who had been programmed to simulate consideration. We ate in silence for several minutes. The food was exquisite. I'd been served a roasted vegetable tart with herbs I couldn't identify, but that tasted like summer, but I could barely appreciate it. Every time I glanced up, I found Sebastian watching me with that intense, assessing gaze. "You're staring," I finally said. "I apologize. I'm trying to understand something." "What?" "How you can sit there looking so composed when your entire life just changed in the span of a few hours." His head tilted slightly. "Most people would be falling apart right now. Demanding answers, throwing tantrums, regretting their decision. You're doing none of those things. Would throwing a tantrum change anything?" "No." "Then what would be the point?" I set down my fork. "I made a choice, Sebastian. Not a great choice, maybe not even a good choice, but a choice nonetheless. I can either spend the next 2 years being miserable about it, or I can try to make the best of an admittedly bizarre situation. Practical. Realistic." I met his gaze. "You're not the villain in this story, and I'm not the victim. We're 2 people who made a deal. That's all." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the ice perhaps. "You're different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more fragile, easy to manage." He picked up his wine glass, swirling the dark red liquid. The background report painted a picture of someone soft, gentle. A kindergarten teacher who makes heart-shaped sandwiches for her students' lunches. "I do make heart-shaped sandwiches." I felt defensive suddenly. "And I am gentle with 5-year-olds. But that doesn't mean I'm fragile." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't. I'm realizing that now." We finished the main course, roasted chicken for him, an elaborate mushroom dish for me, in more comfortable silence. Dessert arrived, some kind of chocolate creation that probably had a French name I'd butcher if I tried to pronounce it. "I have a business trip next week," Sebastian said as we ate. "Chicago for 3 days. You're welcome to come, or you can stay here and continue settling in. Either way is fine." "What would be expected if I came?" "1 dinner with clients. Otherwise, you'd have time to yourself during the day while I'm in meetings." He paused. "It might be good practice for the larger events we'll need to attend together. Lower stakes." "Okay. I'll come." The word surprised me, but it made sense. Better to figure out how to play the role of Mrs. Thornwood in front of strangers than to fail spectacularly at some important gala. "I'll have my assistant coordinate with you on the details." Sebastian checked his watch. Something slim and expensive that probably cost more than a car. I need to make some calls to London before the markets close there. Will you be all right on your own for the evening? I'll manage. He stood and I did the same. For a moment, we faced each other across the candlelit table, and I was struck again by how surreal this all was. This morning, I'd woken up in my cramped apartment. Tonight, I was standing in a mansion with a husband who looked at me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Claire. He stepped closer, and I caught that scent of cedar and leather again. I know this isn't what you would have chosen. What either of us would have chosen if circumstances were different. But I want you to know, I'll do everything in my power to make these 2 years as comfortable for you as possible. As long as I play my part. Yes. No point lying about it. But I think we might be able to make this work. We're both pragmatic people. Both capable of separating business from emotion. That's more than most real marriages have. It was possibly the saddest thing I'd ever heard someone say about marriage. Good night, Sebastian. Good night, Claire. He left through one door, and I found my way back to my rooms through another, getting lost twice before a helpful staff member redirected me. The house was too big, too maze-like. I need a map. Back in my sitting room, I found that someone had turned down the bed, left a pitcher of water on the nightstand, and laid out what looked like silk pajamas. The fire had been lit, taking the chill out of the evening air. I changed into the pajamas, they fit perfectly of course, and sank into the ridiculous bed, my body exhausted but my mind racing. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Mom's first treatment went well. Doctors are optimistic. She asked about you. I told her you were happy. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. Happy? Was I happy? I was overwhelmed, confused, living in luxury while playing a role in someone else's life. But my mother was getting treatment. Olivia could finish her degree. Our house was safe. Maybe happiness was too much to ask for. Maybe contentment would have to be enough. Type back good. Tell her I love her. And live. Thank you for understanding. Always. Sleep well, Mrs. Thornwood. Mrs. Thornwood. That's who I was now. I set my phone on the nightstand and turned off the light, watching shadows dance on the ceiling from the flickering fire. Somewhere in this enormous house, Sebastian was probably still on his phone, conducting business across time zones, being the ruthless CEO everyone said he was. And here I was, his wife in name only, trying to figure out how to survive 2 years in a gilded cage with a man who'd made it clear he had no capacity for love. 2 years. Could do this. Had to do this. As sleep finally pulled me under, my last thought was of the way Sebastian had looked at me across the dinner table. Intense, assessing, almost curious. Like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. I just hoped he never figured out that the biggest puzzle of all was why. Despite everything, some small, foolish part of me wanted him to look at me like that again. Chapter 2. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where I was. The ceiling above me was too high. The mattress beneath me too soft. The silence too complete. No traffic sounds, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no sirens wailing in the distance. Just birdsong and the distant sound of a lawn mower. Then it all came rushing back. Courthouse. The rings. Sebastian's ice blue eyes. Mrs. Thornwood, welcome home. I was married. I lived in a mansion. My life was no longer my own. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. 8:47 a.m. Later than I'd slept in years. At home, I'd have been up by 6, preparing lessons for my kindergartners, making coffee in my tiny kitchen while listening to the morning news. A soft knock on the door made me sit up, clutching the silk sheets. Mrs. Thornwood. Anna's voice, tentative. I have your breakfast and some messages from Mr. Thornwood. Come in. She entered carrying a tray laden with fresh fruit, yogurt, granola, and a pot of tea that smelled like heaven. She set it on the small table by the window, then turned to me with a shy smile. Mr. Thornwood left for his office at 6 this morning. He asked me to give you this. She held out a cream-colored envelope with my name written in bold, precise handwriting. I took it, my fingers brushing the heavy cardstock. Thank you. He also said you shouldn't feel obligated to any particular schedule today. Mrs. Chen can arrange a tour of the grounds if you'd like, or a car into the city if you need anything. Whatever you prefer. Whatever I preferred. As if I had any idea what to do with myself in this strange new world. I'll let you enjoy your breakfast. Anna moved toward the door, then paused. Mrs. Thornwood. I just wanted to say. We're all very happy for Mr. Sebastian. It's nice to see him smile. She was gone before I could process that statement. Sebastian smiled. I'd seen that almost smile, that ghost of amusement, but actual smiling seemed beyond his emotional range. I opened the envelope, pulling out a single sheet of paper. Blair. I apologize for leaving without saying goodbye. An early meeting couldn't be avoided. I've instructed the staff to accommodate any requests you might have today. My assistant Jennifer will contact you this afternoon regarding the Chicago trip. She'll need your clothing sizes and preferences for the client dinner. I should be home by 7. If you'd prefer to dine alone tonight, simply let Mrs. Chen know. Sebastian. Home by 7. As if this were a normal marriage where wives waited for their husbands to return from work. As if I were the kind of woman who spent her days in luxury, waited on by staff, with nothing to do but look decorative. I set the note aside and moved to the breakfast tray, pouring myself a cup of tea. The view from the window was spectacular. Manicured gardens giving way to natural woodland, morning mist still clinging to the grass. A deer picked its way delicately across the lawn, pausing to graze before disappearing into the trees. Beautiful, peaceful, like a postcard of a life I'd never imagined living. My phone rang. Olivia. Please tell me you survived the night, she said without preamble. I survived. I'm having tea on my balcony overlooking gardens that probably have their own zip code. See. Not so terrible. Liv, I don't know what to do with myself. I carried the phone to the balcony, settling into one of the wrought iron chairs. I'm supposed to just exist here, play lady of the manor while Sebastian goes to work and makes his billions. You could go to work too. Didn't you negotiate that? Part-time teaching. But school's out for summer right now. I don't start back until September, and even then. I trailed off, watching the deer reappear at the edge of the tree line. I don't know if I can go back to my old classroom. How do I explain where I've been? What I've done? You got married. People do that. People get married to people they love. People have engagement periods and wedding showers and... I felt tears prick my eyes and blinked them away furiously. I'm being ridiculous. Mom's getting treatment. You can finish your degree. That's what matters. Claire. Olivia's voice softened. You're allowed to feel weird about this. You're allowed to be sad that your wedding day was in a courthouse with no celebration. You're allowed to be confused about living in a mansion with a stranger. Just because you chose this doesn't mean it's easy. I swallowed hard. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy taking care of everyone to notice. Pause. How is he? Sebastian. Is he treating you well? I thought about the designer wardrobe, the thoughtful note, the way he'd apologized when he realized he'd overstepped. He's correct. Polite. He left me a note this morning and made sure I'd be taken care of. But it's like living with a very considerate robot. Everything is calculated, measured. He told me last night he doesn't have the capacity for emotional intimacy. That he's not built that way. That's sad. That's honest. I sipped my tea, savoring the delicate flavor. At least I know where I stand. No false pretenses. No risk of catching feelings for someone who can't return them. Claire Elizabeth Fitzgerald. Thornwood. I corrected automatically. You are not seriously trying to convince me that you're immune to catching feelings for the mysterious billionaire you're living with. It's a business arrangement, Liv. It's a romance novel waiting to happen. Arranged marriage. Brooding hero who claims he can't love. Innocent heroine who'll inevitably melt his icy heart. Check. This is real life, not a book. Real life can be just as interesting as fiction. She laughed. Just promise me you'll keep an open mind. You never know what might happen in 2 years. After we hung up, I showered in the palatial bathroom, taking my time to figure out all the controls and nearly flooding the place when I couldn't turn off one of the shower heads. I dressed in jeans and a simple blouse from my own limited wardrobe, needing something familiar against my skin. Mrs. Chen found me an hour later, wandering the hallways like a ghost, trying to memorize the layout of the house. Mrs. Thornwood, perfect timing. Mr. Thornwood's mother called. She'd like to have lunch with you today, if you're available. My stomach dropped. His mother. Mrs. Victoria Thornwood. She's very eager to meet you. Mrs. Chen's expression was carefully neutral, but something in her tone suggested this wasn't entirely a social call. She suggested the club at noon. I can have James drive you. He's one of our drivers, not Mr. James, she clarified. Shall I confirm? I wanted to say no. Wanted to hide in my rooms and avoid meeting the woman who had raised Sebastian, who probably had very specific ideas about who her son should have married and definitely wouldn't approve of a kindergarten teacher from Queens. But this was part of the deal. Playing the role. Being Mrs. Thornwood in public. Yes, please confirm. Thank you. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the back of a Mercedes, wearing one of the dresses from my new wardrobe, a pale pink sheath that somehow made me look elegant and expensive. My hair had been styled by Anna, who'd appeared with a curling iron and a determined expression. I wore pearl earrings that had appeared in the jewelry box I'd discovered in my dressing room, alongside several other pieces I was afraid to calculate the value of. I looked like I belonged in Sebastian's world. Felt like an imposter. The club was exactly what I'd expected. Old money, older traditions, and the kind of hushed elegance that came from centuries of excluding anyone who didn't meet exacting standards. The maitre d' greeted me by name, which was unsettling, and led me through a dining room full of women who looked like they'd been born wearing pearls. Victoria Thornwood waited at a corner table, and I recognized her immediately from the photographs I'd found online. Elegant in her late 60s, with silver hair styled in a perfect bob and Sebastian's same ice blue eyes. She wore a dove gray suit that probably cost more than I used to make in a month, and diamonds that were definitely real. She stood as I approached, and I braced myself for coldness, for judgment, for the kind of upper-class disdain I'd seen in movies. Instead, she smiled warmly and pulled me into an unexpected embrace. Claire, darling. Let me look at you. She held me at arm's length, those sharp eyes assessing. Oh, you're lovely. Much lovelier than the photographs Sebastian showed me. He showed you photographs? Of course. I had to make sure my son was marrying someone appropriate. She gestured for me to sit, settling back into her own chair with practiced grace. I understand this all happened rather quickly. Very quickly, I agreed carefully, not sure how much she knew. Victoria ordered for both of us. Salads, sparkling water, nothing too heavy, then turned her full attention to me. Sebastian tells me you're a teacher. Yes. Kindergarten. How wonderful. I always thought Sebastian would have made an excellent teacher if he hadn't been born into this ridiculous family business. She waved a dismissive hand. All that intelligence wasted on making money when he could have been shaping young minds. I blinked surprised. You don't think he should run the family company? I think Sebastian should do whatever makes him happy. Unfortunately, happiness isn't something Thornwood men tend to prioritize. Her expression turned wistful. His father was the same way. Brilliant, driven, absolutely devoted to the business. And absolutely incapable of letting anyone close. The way she said it, with affection and resignation, made my chest ache. Sebastian mentioned his father passed away. 10 years ago. Heart attack at his desk. He was 53. Victoria's fingers traced the rim of her water glass. He worked himself to death, and Sebastian is following the same path. I had hoped. She paused, studying me with renewed intensity. I had hoped that marriage might change that. Give him something beyond spreadsheets and board meetings. I shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Thornwood, I should be honest with you. Victoria, please. Victoria. Sebastian and I. Our marriage isn't exactly. I know about the trust. She said it quietly but firmly. I know my father-in-law's ridiculous requirements. I know Sebastian needed to be married by his 36th birthday. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. What I don't know is why he chose you specifically. He could have married anyone. But he chose a kindergarten teacher from Queens who looks at him like he's a puzzle she wants to solve. I don't. Oh, darling, I saw the wedding photos James sent me. You were looking at my son like you were trying to figure out what made him tick. And he was looking at you like. She trailed off, shaking her head. Like he'd found something unexpected. Our salads arrived, giving me a moment to process. The wedding photos. I hadn't even known anyone was taking photos. May I give you some advice? Victoria asked, spearing a piece of lettuce with delicate precision. Of course. Sebastian has spent his entire life believing he has to be perfect, strong, in control, never showing weakness or emotion because that's what Thornwood men do. She met my eyes. It's made him brilliant at business and absolutely terrible at being human. Don't let him convince you he's incapable of feeling. He's just never learned how. I'm not sure I'm the person to teach him. You're exactly the person, whether you realize it or not. Victoria smiled that warm, knowing smile. Why else would he have chosen someone so completely different from his world? Someone genuine and kind and unimpressed by money. I'm very impressed by money, actually. It's saving my mother's life. Yes, James mentioned your mother's illness. I'm so sorry. How is her treatment going? We talked for the next hour about everything except Sebastian. My mother's diagnosis, Olivia's doctoral research, my work with kindergartners, Victoria's charity projects. She was warm and funny and surprisingly down-to-earth for a woman who probably had more money than some small countries. As we were finishing coffee, perfectly prepared of course, she grew serious again. Claire, I'm going to be frank with you. I don't know the specifics of your arrangement with Sebastian, and I don't need to. But I do know my son, and I know he doesn't do anything without careful consideration. He paused. He chose you for a reason. Maybe even reasons he doesn't fully understand himself. Don't underestimate the impact you could have on his life. I'm only here for 2 years, I said before I could stop myself. Victoria's eyebrows rose. 2 years is a long time. A lot can change. The driver was waiting when we emerged from the club. Victoria kissed both my cheeks European style, and made me promise to come for tea the following week. And bring Sebastian if you can pry him away from his office, she added. I barely see him anymore. On the drive back to the estate, I stared out the window at the passing scenery, the city giving way to suburbs giving way to the wooded privacy of old estates, and thought about Victoria's words. 2 years is a long time. A lot can change. Could it? Could Sebastian change from the cold, controlled man I'd married into someone capable of actual connection? Did I even want him to, or was the distance between us safer? Cleaner. The house loomed into view, grand and imposing. My prison and my palace all at once. Inside, Mrs. Chen intercepted me before I'd even made it to the stairs. Mrs. Thornwood, Mr. Sebastian's assistant, called. She'll be here at 3 to go over the Chicago trip details. And these were delivered for you. She gestured to a side table where 3 large boxes sat, each wrapped in expensive paper and tied with silk ribbons. What are those? I believe Mr. Sebastian arranged them. There's a card. I opened the card with trembling fingers. Blair, I realized last night that I've asked you to play a role without giving you the tools to do so successfully. These should help. Consider them part of your compensation, not a gift. Part of my compensation, not a gift. Because gifts implied something personal, something emotional, and Sebastian had made it clear he didn't do emotional. I opened the first box to find a handbag. Designer leather, the kind I'd seen in magazines but never imagined touching. The second held shoes, elegant heels in a neutral color that would match everything. The third was filled with jewelry, tasteful pieces, nothing too flashy, but all clearly expensive. "He has excellent taste," Mrs. Chen observed. "He has an excellent personal shopper," I corrected, staring at the contents of the boxes. "This isn't from him. It's from whoever he pays to make sure his wife looks appropriate." "Perhaps." Mrs. Chen's tone suggested she thought differently. "But he's the one who instructed her on what to choose. Very specific instructions, from what Jennifer mentioned. He wanted things that would suit your coloring and style, not just expensive items." I closed the boxes, suddenly exhausted. "Mrs. Chen, do you know if there's anywhere on the estate where I could be alone? Truly alone, without staff?" She considered this. "The old greenhouse, perhaps. It hasn't been used in years, since Mr. Sebastian's grandmother passed. It's a bit wild now, but private." "Perfect. Could you show me?" 10 minutes later, I was following a winding path through the gardens to a glass structure tucked behind a grove of ancient oaks. Mrs. Chen unlocked the door. "I'll have a key made for you," and left me alone. The greenhouse was exactly what I needed. Overgrown, slightly wild, with climbing vines and flowering plants that had long since escaped their pots and taken over. It smelled of earth and green things, of life continuing without human intervention. I sank onto an old wooden bench and finally let myself cry. For my old life, simple but mine. For my mother's illness and my father's death and the weight of responsibility that had led me here. For the loneliness of living in luxury with a man who saw me as a business transaction. For the 2 years stretching ahead, playing a role, pretending, living a lie. I cried until I had no tears left, until my eyes were swollen and my throat raw. Then I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders and walked back to the house. I had a meeting with Sebastian's assistant at 3. I had a role to play. I had a contract to fulfill. Mrs. Thornwood didn't cry in greenhouses. Mrs. Thornwood smiled and wore expensive handbags and attended client dinners in Chicago. Could do this. I would do this, even if it meant losing myself in the process. Jennifer arrived precisely at 3. A whirlwind of efficiency in a crisp suit, carrying an iPad and an expression that suggested she had better things to do. "Mrs. Thornwood, lovely to meet you." Her handshake was firm, professional. "I'm Jennifer Park, Mr. Thornwood's executive assistant. I'll be coordinating all your public appearances and helping you navigate your new role." We settled in my sitting room, and she pulled up what appeared to be a comprehensive schedule on her iPad. "The Chicago trip is straightforward. We fly out Monday morning on Mr. Thornwood's jet, return Wednesday evening. Tuesday night is the client dinner, approximately 30 people, business formal. I've arranged for hair and makeup to come to the hotel that afternoon. Sebastian has a jet. Of course. Much more efficient than commercial." She didn't even blink at my surprise. "Now, for the dinner, you'll need to be familiar with the key players. I've prepared dossiers on each couple attending." She handed me a slim folder. Inside were photographs and brief biographies of 15 couples, all important business contacts Sebastian was courting for some massive investment deal. "You don't need to remember everything, but knowing names and a few personal details will help. Mr. Thornwood's clients expect a certain level of sophistication from his wife." The way she said it made me bristle. "I can handle small talk, Jennifer." "I'm sure you can. But these aren't normal social situations. These people are assessing everything. Your clothes, your conversation, your knowledge of art and wine and current events. You're a reflection of Mr. Thornwood's judgment. No pressure then." She almost smiled. "Almost. You'll be fine. Mr. Thornwood wouldn't have chosen you if he didn't think you could handle it." We spent the next 2 hours going over wardrobe choices, appropriate topics of conversation, people to avoid if possible, and the general rules of engagement for business dinners in Sebastian's world. "One more thing," Jennifer said as she was packing up. "Mr. Thornwood mentioned you might want to continue teaching part-time. I can help arrange that for the fall, coordinate with your schedule and his. Just let me know what you need." "Thank you." I appreciate that. He paused at the door. Mrs. Thornwood. I've worked for Mr. Thornwood for 5 years. I've never seen him make a decision this quickly about anything, let alone something as important as marriage. Whatever his reasons, he chose you. Don't doubt that. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with a folder full of strangers I'd need to charm and a growing sense of unreality about my entire situation. I was still sitting there, staring at the dossiers when Sebastian came home. I heard his footsteps in the hallway, that measured, purposeful stride. Soft knock on my door. Claire. May I come in? Yes. He entered, still in his suit but with his tie loosened and his jacket over one arm. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw. How was lunch with my mother? Surprisingly pleasant. She's wonderful. She is. He moved to the window, looking out over the gardens. She also has very strong opinions about how I live my life, so I apologize in advance for whatever advice she gave you. She just told me not to underestimate you. He turned those ice-blue eyes sharp. What does that mean? I think it means she believes you're capable of more than you give yourself credit for. I stood, suddenly needing to say this face to face. Sebastian, thank you for the boxes, the handbag and shoes and jewelry. But you didn't have to. I can play the part without. I wanted you to have them. He said it simply, but something in his tone made me look at him more closely. Not because you need them to play a role, but because you deserve to have nice things. You've spent your entire adult life sacrificing for others. Let me do this. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the clinical businessman making sure his acquisition was properly dressed. This was something else. Okay, I said softly. Thank you. We stood there in the fading afternoon light, an ocean of space between us but something shifting in the air. Some acknowledgement of what we were to each other. Not quite friends, not quite strangers, but two people bound together by circumstance and trying to figure out what that meant. Dinner at 7, he asked. I'll be there. He nodded and left, and I sank back onto the sofa, my heart racing for reasons I didn't want to examine. 2 years, I reminded myself. Just 2 years. But Victoria was right about one thing. 2 years was a long time. And a lot could change. Chapter 3. The private jet was obscene. I'd known Sebastian was wealthy. The estate, the staff, the casual way he'd written off my family's debts made that clear. But somehow the reality of stepping onto a plane that belonged to him personally drove it home in a way nothing else had. Cream leather seats. Polished wood accents. A bedroom in the back, for God's sake. A flight attendant whose sole job was to cater to our needs for the 3-hour flight to Chicago. Would you like champagne, Mrs. Thornwood? She asked with a professional smile. Just water, please. I settled into a seat by the window, trying not to think about how much this plane cost, how much it cost to maintain, how many people could be fed or housed or educated with that money. Sebastian appeared from the bedroom section, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire about market fluctuations and investment portfolios. He gestured an apology to me and disappeared into a small office space near the cockpit. So much for quality time together. The flight attendant, Michelle, she'd introduced herself, brought my water and a selection of breakfast pastries I hadn't asked for, but that looked incredible. Mr. Thornwood will likely be occupied for most of the flight, she said kindly. He usually is. There are magazines in the pocket, or I can set up a movie if you'd like. Thank you. I brought a book. I pulled out the thriller I'd been reading in what felt like another lifetime, but the words blurred on the page. Instead, I stared out the window as we climbed above the clouds, watching the world shrink below us. This was really happening. I was flying on a private jet to Chicago to play the devoted wife at a business dinner. In 2 days, I'd smile and make small talk with strangers, pretending to be someone I wasn't, so Sebastian could access his inheritance and I could save my mother's life. When you thought about it that way, it seemed almost noble. Sacrifice. A transaction with clear terms and mutual benefits. So why did I feel like I was losing pieces of myself with every passing day? Sebastian emerged from the office an hour into the flight, looking slightly less tense. He slid into the seat across from me, accepting coffee from Michelle with a nod of thanks. "I apologize for the neglect," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "The markets opened poorly this morning. I needed to make some adjustments." "It's fine. I didn't expect you to entertain me. Still, this is technically our honeymoon trip." That almost smile flickered across his face. "Even if it's a working honeymoon. Is there any other kind in your world?" "Probably not." He took a sip of his coffee, studying me over the rim of the cup. "You look nervous." "I am nervous. I've been studying the dossiers Jennifer gave me, but I'm terrified I'm going to mix up names or say something inappropriate or... Claire." He leaned forward, his voice calm and certain. "You're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're intelligent, articulate, and genuinely interested in people. That's more than most of the wives who'll be there can say. They grew up in this world. They know the rules. The rules are simple. Smile, ask questions, listen more than you talk, and remember that you're not auditioning for anyone's approval. You're my wife. That's all the credential you need." The way he said "my wife" sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. It sounded possessive, protective. Things he had no reason to feel about a business arrangement. What if they ask how we met? Or about our relationship? Sebastian set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. "We met through mutual acquaintances at a charity benefit. We connected over shared values regarding education and philanthropy. The relationship developed quickly because when you know. He said it smoothly like he'd rehearsed it. "Keep it vague, slightly romantic. Don't offer details they didn't ask for. Lying, in other words. Controlling the narrative." His expression remained neutral. "There's a difference." I wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. This was the deal. This was what I'd signed up for. Michelle appeared to collect our cups. "We'll be landing in about 40 minutes. Is there anything else I can get for you?" "No, thank you." Sebastian waited until she'd gone, then turned back to me. "There's something else you should know about tonight." My stomach clenched. "What?" "One of the couples attending, Richard and Melissa Hartley, are old family friends. They knew my father well and they'll be interested in you." "Interested how?" "Richard has been pushing me to marry for years. Trying to set me up with Melissa's sister, actually. They'll want to understand why I chose you instead of someone from their social circle." "Someone more appropriate, you mean? Someone more predictable?" He held my gaze. "I need you to understand that they may ask intrusive questions. They may try to make you uncomfortable. If that happens, deflect or excuse yourself. You don't owe them anything. But you need them for your business deal. Not as much as I need you to feel safe." The intensity in his voice surprised me. "If they cross a line, we leave. The deal isn't worth that." I stared at him, trying to reconcile this protective statement with the cold businessman who'd presented me with a contract and a price. "Why did you choose me, Sebastian?" "Really?" "Your mother asked me the same thing, and I didn't have an answer." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the window where clouds stretched endlessly. When he spoke, his voice was lower, almost vulnerable. "Because everyone else wanted something from me. My name, my money, my connections. They saw me as a means to an end." His eyes came back to mine. "You were the first person I'd met in years who wanted nothing to do with me or my world. You agreed to this marriage for your family, not for yourself. That kind of selflessness is rare. So you married me because I didn't want to marry you. I married you because I knew you wouldn't pretend to feel things you don't. Wouldn't expect things I can't give. You were honest about what this was from the beginning." He paused. "That honesty is worth more to me than you know." Before I could respond, Michelle's voice came over the intercom. "Please prepare for landing." The moment broke. Sebastian buckled his seatbelt and pulled out his phone, already shifting back into business mode. But something had changed between us. Some small crack in the wall he'd built around himself. And I wasn't sure if that was dangerous or exactly what I needed. The hotel was 5-star luxury in downtown Chicago, with a suite that rivaled the rooms at the estate. Sebastian's assistant had apparently booked the entire floor for privacy and security. "The hair and makeup team will be here at 4, Sebastian said, setting down his briefcase in the living area of our suite. "I have meetings until 6, then I'll come back to change. We need to be at the restaurant by 7:30. He was already in motion toward the bedroom, pulling out his phone to check messages. Constant motion, constant work, never still. "Sebastian." He stopped, turning back to me. "Are you ever not working?" Something flickered in his expression. Surprise maybe that I'd asked. "Not often." "Why not?" "Because if I stop, I have to think about things I'd rather not think about." He said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Work is simple, clear. Problems have solutions. Success is measurable. And everything else is complicated." He loosened his tie, a gesture I was learning meant he was uncomfortable. "I should go. These meetings are important." He left before I could push further, and I was alone in the enormous suite with nothing to do but worry about the evening ahead. I tried calling Olivia, but she was in class. I attempted to read my book again, gave up after rereading the same page 4 times. Finally, I stood on the balcony and watched the city move below, cars and pedestrians and life continuing while I existed in this strange bubble of wealth and pretense. At 4 o'clock precisely, the hair and makeup team arrived. 2 women who swooped in with cases of products and an air of professional efficiency that would have been intimidating if they hadn't been so friendly. "Mrs. Thornwood, I'm Simone, and this is Anna. We're going to make you absolutely stunning tonight." Simone had a French accent and an artist's eye as she studied my face. "You have beautiful bone structure. Classic. We'll enhance, not transform." For the next 2 hours I was poked and prodded, my hair curled and pinned, my face carefully painted. They chatted easily while they worked, talking about other clients and upcoming events, treating me like I belonged in this world of private jets and hotel suites. When they finally stepped back to let me see the results, I barely recognized myself. My hair had been styled in soft waves pulled back from my face with a few tendrils escaping artfully. My makeup was subtle but sophisticated. Smoky eyes, defined cheekbones, lips in a shade that looked natural but better. I looked elegant, expensive, like someone who belonged on Sebastian Thornwood's arm. "The dress is hanging in the closet," Anna said. "Jennifer had it sent over. And the shoes and jewelry are laid out on the bed." They packed up their supplies and left with cheerful goodbyes and wishes of good luck, and I was alone again with this stranger in the mirror. The dress was midnight blue silk, simple and elegant with a draped neckline and a skirt that fell to just above my knees. The shoes were silver heels that added 3 inches to my height. The jewelry was understated. Diamond studs and a delicate bracelet that caught the light when I moved. I put it all on slowly, my hands trembling slightly. This was it. The first real test of whether I could pull off this charade. A knock on the bedroom door made me jump. "Claire, are you ready? We should leave in 10 minutes. I opened the door to find Sebastian in a dark suit that fit him perfectly. His tie precisely knotted. His hair styled back from his face. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread on powerful men. Then he saw me, and his expression transformed. It wasn't the clinical assessment I'd come to expect. It was something more visceral. His pupils dilated. His jaw tightened. For a moment, he just stared, and I felt heat creep up my neck under the intensity of his gaze. "You look." He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "Beautiful. You look beautiful, Claire." "Thank you. You clean up well yourself." He moved closer, reaching out as if to touch my face, then stopping himself. His hand dropped back to his side. "I should mention that tonight in public we'll need to appear affectionate. Nothing excessive but hand-holding my arm around your waist. Things married couples do." "Okay. If it makes you uncomfortable." It's fine. It's part of the deal. I picked up the small clutch that matched my dress, needing something to do with my hands. We should go. The car ride to the restaurant was quiet, tension humming between us. Sebastian's thigh pressed against mine in the back seat, and I was acutely aware of every point where our bodies touched. He smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him, and I had to resist the urge to lean closer. This was a business arrangement, I reminded myself. The attraction I was feeling was just proximity and circumstance. It didn't mean anything. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu and required reservations months in advance. We were led to a private dining room where the other couples were already gathering, champagne in hand, laughter filling the air. Sebastian's hand settled at the small of my back, warm, possessive, exactly like he'd warned me. But knowing it was coming didn't prepare me for how it felt. "All right. Ready," he murmured in my ear. I nodded, and we stepped into the room together. The next 3 hours were a blur of names and faces and carefully navigated conversations. Sebastian was right, I could do this. I smiled and asked questions and listened to stories about summer homes in the Hamptons and European vacations and charitable foundations. Richard and Melissa Hartley were exactly as I'd imagined. Polished, charming, and with eyes that assessed me like I was a piece of art they were considering purchasing. "So, Claire," Melissa said when we were seated at dinner, Sebastian on one side of me and Richard on the other. "Sebastian tells us you're a teacher. How? Interesting." The pause before interesting was deliberate. Subtle dig. "I love it," I replied easily. "There's something wonderful about shaping young minds, watching them discover the world. I'm sure. Though I imagine it's quite a change from that to this." She gestured around the opulent room. "Sebastian's world can be overwhelming for someone not accustomed to it." Sebastian's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. A reminder that I wasn't alone. "It's definitely an adjustment," I admitted. "But Sebastian has been very patient with me." "Patient? How sweet." Melissa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And how did you two meet?" Sebastian's been so mysterious about the whole courtship. This was it. The story we'd prepared. "At a charity benefit for education reform," I said, keeping my voice light. We were seated at the same table and started talking about the importance of early childhood education. Sebastian had some fascinating ideas about innovative funding models. "How romantic," Richard interjected, his tone making it clear he found nothing romantic about funding models. "Love at first sight over spreadsheets. More like love over shared values," Sebastian said smoothly, his arm sliding around my shoulders. "When you meet someone who sees the world the way you do, someone genuine and kind, you don't let that slip away." The way he said it, with such conviction, almost made me believe it was true. "And the wedding was rather sudden, wasn't it?" Melissa pressed. "You must have known each other, what, a few months?" "When you know," I replied, echoing Sebastian's earlier words. "We didn't see the point in waiting. No family wedding. No big celebration." Melissa's eyes glittered with barely concealed judgment. "Most women dream of their wedding day. Most women haven't spent the last few years watching their mother fight cancer," I said quietly. "My priorities are a bit different." The table went silent. Melissa had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't." Sebastian's voice was cold, protective. "Which is why making assumptions about people's choices is generally unwise." Richard cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the turn in conversation. "Well, regardless of how you got here, welcome to the family, Claire. Anyone who can handle Sebastian must be exceptional." The rest of dinner passed more smoothly. Sebastian kept his arm around me, or his hand on my knee, or our fingers intertwined. To anyone watching, we looked like newlyweds, unable to stop touching each other. And the terrifying part was how easy it felt. How natural to lean into his warmth, to laugh at his dry observations, to fit against his side like we'd been doing this for years instead of days. By the time we made it back to the hotel, my face hurt from smiling and my feet were killing me from the heels. Sebastian unlocked the suite door, and we stepped inside to blessed silence and privacy. "You were perfect," he said, loosening his tie as he walked to the minibar. "Better than perfect. You handled Melissa's passive aggression beautifully. She really doesn't like me. She doesn't like that I married you instead of her sister." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering me one. "Her problem, not yours." I took the glass, kicking off my heels with a groan of relief. "Do you think they believed us? Does it matter?" He took a long drink, his eyes on me over the rim of the glass. "We're married. That's a fact. Whether they believe we're in love is irrelevant. Except your grandfather's trust probably has some clause about the marriage being genuine." "It does. But proving a marriage is fraudulent is nearly impossible unless one of the parties admits to it." He set down his glass and moved closer. "Which we won't." We were standing very close now, close enough that I could see the darker flecks in his ice-blue eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Claire." His voice was lower, rougher. "Tonight when I touched you, when I had my arm around you, it was for show. I know. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It wasn't entirely for show." His hand came up, cupping my jaw with surprising gentleness. "I wanted to touch you. Wanted to keep you close. And that wasn't part of the plan." My breath caught in my throat. "Sebastian, I know what I said about not having capacity for emotional intimacy, about this being purely business. But something's changed." His thumb brushed across my cheek. "You've changed something. That's just proximity, spending time together. It doesn't mean, doesn't it?" He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching mine. "Tell me you don't feel it too. This thing between us that has nothing to do with contracts or arrangements." Couldn't. Because I did feel it, that pull, that attraction, that dangerous warmth that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the way he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. "Terrible idea," he agreed. "We have rules. Boundaries. We do. 2 years and then we walk away. That's the agreement." His hand slid into my hair, gentle but possessive. "Tell me to stop, Claire. Tell me this isn't what you want." I should have stepped back, reminded him of the contract, protected myself from the inevitable heartbreak of falling for a man who'd told me he couldn't love me. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. It wasn't like our courthouse kiss, brief and obligatory. This was hunger and heat, and 2 people who'd been fighting attraction for weeks finally giving in. His arms came around me, pulling me flush against him, and I melted into his warmth like I'd been cold my entire life. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were nearly black with desire. "We should stop," I managed. "We should." But his hands were already finding the zipper of my dress. "The contract. The contract says no infidelity. It says nothing about intimacy between husband and wife." His lips traced a path down my neck that made my knees weak. "We're married, Claire. Legally, morally, in every way that matters. If we want each other, there's no rule against it." He was right. And God help me, I wanted him. Wanted this. Wanted to stop overthinking and just feel something real in this world of pretense and performance. "Okay," I breathed. That was all the permission he needed. Sebastian swept me into his arms, carrying me toward the bedroom with a determination that made my heart race. Whatever happened next would change everything between us. But as he laid me on the bed, his eyes holding mine with an intensity that stole my breath, I couldn't bring myself to care about consequences. Tomorrow we could go back to being business partners playing roles. Tonight we were just Sebastian and Claire, 2 people who wanted each other desperately. And for now that was enough. Chapter 4. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the weight of an arm draped across my waist. For a moment I didn't move, didn't breathe, just lay there processing the reality of Sebastian's body curved around mine. His chest pressed against my back, his breath warm against my neck. Last night had happened. All of it. The memories came flooding back in vivid detail. His hands on my skin, his mouth trailing fire across every inch of me, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious as he moved inside me. The whispered words in the darkness that had felt like promises neither of us should make. And now it was morning and we had to figure out what any of it meant. Sebastian stirred behind me, his arm tightening briefly before he seemed to realize where he was. He went very still. "Claire." His voice was rough with sleep. "Are you awake?" "Yes." Was. Then he shifted, propping himself up on one elbow so he could see my face. His hair was mussed, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen them, and he looked younger somehow, less guarded. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine. Are you?" "I'm." He trailed off, seeming to search for the right word. "I'm not sure what I am." I turned to face him properly, pulling the sheet up to cover myself. In the bright light of day, the intimacy of last night felt both more real and more terrifying. "We should probably talk about what this means," I said. "Yes, we should." But he didn't move, just studied my face like he was trying to memorize it. "I need you to know, last night wasn't something I planned. Wasn't part of any calculation or strategy. I know. And I don't regret it." His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from my face. "I should, given the terms of our arrangement. But I don't. Neither do I." The admission felt dangerous but necessary. "But Sebastian, we need to be realistic. This complicates everything." "It doesn't have to." He sat up, the sheet pooling around his waist, and I tried not to be distracted by the lean muscle of his torso, the scars I'd traced with my fingers in the darkness. "We're married. We're attracted to each other. Why shouldn't we act on that? Because in 2 years, we're supposed to walk away from each other. How do we do that if we're—" I gestured between us, unable to find the right words. "If we're what?" "Involved. Intimate." His jaw tightened. "Claire, I was honest with you from the beginning. I don't do relationships. I don't have the capacity for the kind of emotional commitment most people expect. But what we have, this attraction, this connection, it's real. Why deny ourselves that for the sake of some arbitrary timeline? Because I'm not built like you, Sebastian." I sat up too, wrapping the sheet around myself like armor. I can't separate physical intimacy from emotional connection. Last night meant something to me. And if we keep doing this, it's going to mean more. And then in 2 years when we divorce, it's going to break me. He flinched like I'd struck him. "You think I'm capable of being that callous? Using you and then discarding you? I think you're capable of protecting yourself. Of keeping that wall around your heart no matter what." I met his gaze. "You told me you're not built for love. Believe you. But I am built for it, and that's the problem." Silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Sebastian's expression was unreadable, that mask of control sliding back into place. "What do you want, Claire? Do you want to pretend last night didn't happen? Go back to being polite strangers sharing a house?" "I don't know what I want." The honesty hurt. "I just know I'm scared. Of this, of you, of how easy it would be to fall for you completely." His eyes darkened. "And that would be so terrible." "Yes. Because you've made it clear you can't catch me." I pushed back the covers, needing distance. "I need to think. I need space to figure out what I'm doing." I grabbed my clothes from where they'd been scattered across the floor and retreated to the bathroom, closing the door between us. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman I barely recognized. Kiss-swollen lips, marks on her neck where Sebastian's mouth had been, eyes that held a dangerous mix of hope and fear. I'd known this was a risk. Known that proximity and attraction could lead exactly here. But I'd convinced myself I could handle it, could keep my heart separate from my body. What a beautiful, foolish lie. When I emerged 15 minutes later, showered and dressed in jeans and a sweater, Sebastian was already gone from the bedroom. I found him in the suite's living area, fully dressed in a suit, coffee in hand, looking every inch the controlled businessman again. "I have meetings this morning," he said without preamble. "But we should talk. Tonight after we get back to New York. Really talk about what we're doing here. Okay. Claire." He crossed to me, stopping just close enough that I could smell his cologne. "I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to navigate this any better than you do. But I do know that last night was the first time in years I've felt anything real. I'm not ready to give that up." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. "I have to take this. It's Tokyo." He was already moving away, already shifting into work mode, leaving me alone with my churning thoughts and a heart that was absolutely not supposed to be involved in this arrangement. The flight back to New York that afternoon was tense. Sebastian spent most of it in the office section of the jet, on call after call, while I pretended to read and actually spent the time staring out the window wondering how my carefully controlled plan had spiraled so spectacularly out of my control. We landed as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The car ride back to the estate was silent except for the occasional buzz of Sebastian's phone. "I need to handle something in my study," he said as we pulled up to the house. "Give me an hour, then we'll talk. Please." I nodded, and we separated in the foyer. Him heading to his study, me climbing the stairs to my rooms. Mrs. Chen appeared to ask about dinner, and I requested something light in my room, not ready to sit across from Sebastian at the dining table. Alone in my sitting room, I called Olivia. "How was Chicago?" she asked immediately. "Did you charm all the rich people?" "It was complicated." "Complicated how?" Her voice sharpened with concern. "Did something happen? Is he being awful to you?" "No. The opposite, actually." I sank onto the sofa, pulling my knees to my chest. "Liv, I slept with him." Silence. Then, "Oh, Claire. I know. Do you have feelings for him?" "I'm terrified I'm developing feelings for him. And he's still maintaining this is just business. He says he's not capable of emotional intimacy, but then he looks at me like I'm the only thing that matters and tells me I've changed something in him and, God, Liv, I'm in trouble. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. We're supposed to talk tonight, but I don't know what there is to say. The contract is clear. 2 years and then we divorce. Nothing changes that." "Unless something changes that," Olivia said quietly. "Claire, what if he's lying to himself? What if he is capable of more but he's too scared to admit it? Then I'm still stuck in a relationship with someone who won't acknowledge their own feelings. That's not better. Or it means there's hope. Hope is dangerous in a situation like this. Living without hope is worse." My sister's voice was gentle but firm. "You've spent your whole life being practical, being responsible, putting everyone else first. Maybe it's time to be a little reckless. To take a chance on something that could be amazing even if it's scary." After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, thinking about her words. About recklessness and hope and chances. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Sebastian's voice came through the door. "Claire, may I come in?" "Yes." He entered, and I was struck by how uncertain he looked. This man who commanded boardrooms and ran an empire, standing in my doorway like a teenager asking for a first date. "I've been thinking," he said, moving to sit in the chair across from me. "About what you said this morning. About not being able to separate physical and emotional intimacy." "Sebastian, please let me finish." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're right. You're not built like me. You're better, kinder, more capable of connection." He paused. "And maybe that's exactly what I need." My heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. To be more than what the contract specifies. To see if I can be the kind of person who deserves someone like you." His eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "I can't promise I'll be good at it. I can't promise I won't mess up or retreat when things get too intense. But I want to try. For 2 years and then we walk away." His jaw tightened. "I don't know. I don't have an answer to that part yet. But I know I don't want to spend the next 2 years pretending I don't want you. Pretending last night didn't mean something. It's still going to hurt when it ends. Maybe. He stood, crossing to where I sat, and dropped to his knees in front of me. The gesture was so unexpected, so humble from a man who never showed weakness. But wouldn't you rather have something real, even if it's temporary, than spend 2 years in careful distance? I reached out, my fingers tangling in his hair. You're asking me to risk my heart. I'm asking you to take a chance on me. On us. His hands came up to frame my face. I know it's not fair. I know I'm asking for more than the contract promised. But Claire, I've never wanted anything the way I want this. Want you. Looking into his eyes, seeing the raw honesty there, I made my choice. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was the worst decision I could make. But Olivia was right. Living without hope was worse than risking heartbreak. Okay, I whispered. We try. But Sebastian, you have to promise me something. Anything. If you can't do this, if you realize you really can't open up, can't let me in, you tell me. You don't just shut down and expect me to read your mind. We communicate. Honestly. I promise. He pulled me down into a kiss that tasted like relief and desire, and the beginning of something that terrified us both. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't know how to do this. How to be in a relationship. Neither do I really. My longest relationship was 6 months in college. Then we'll figure it out together. He stood, pulling me up with him. Have you eaten? Mrs. Chen mentioned you requested dinner in your room. I wasn't ready to sit across from you at that formal dining table. Then we eat here. Usual. Just us. That almost smile appeared. I'll even take off my tie if it makes you more comfortable. Radical. I'm feeling revolutionary. He pulled out his phone, texting instructions to the kitchen. What do you want? Surprise me. Dangerous words, Claire. But he was smiling, actually smiling, and something in my chest loosened. Maybe this would end in heartbreak. Maybe I was making a terrible mistake. But right now, in this moment, it felt like the rightest thing I'd done since signing that contract. An hour later, we were sitting on the floor of my sitting room, sharing containers of Thai food that Sebastian had somehow arranged to be delivered, both of us in comfortable clothes with our shoes off. I can't remember the last time I ate sitting on the floor, Sebastian said, expertly handling chopsticks. Really? Never had a picnic. Thornwoods don't picnic. We have catered outdoor events with proper seating. I laughed. That's sad. It's tradition. But he was smiling. What else have I been missing? Movie marathons. Late-night diners. Dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain sounds impractical and likely to result in illness. It's also romantic and fun, 2 things you desperately need more of in your life. He considered this, his expression thoughtful. Show me. Show you what? How to be less practical. How to have fun. He set down his food, his gaze intense. You said I work constantly because if I stop I have to think about things I'd rather not think about. Help me find other things to think about. It was such a vulnerable request, so at odds with the controlled CEO image he projected, that I felt something shift in my chest. This was the real Sebastian, I realized. The one hiding beneath layers of business suits and corporate strategy. The one who'd been alone for so long he'd forgotten how to be anything else. Okay, I said softly. But you have to be willing to look ridiculous sometimes. I can probably manage that. And you have to promise not to check your phone every 5 minutes. He glanced at his phone sitting on the coffee table, then deliberately turned it face down. Done. What else? You have to be present. Actually here. Not thinking about markets or investments or board meetings. That one might be harder. Try. He met my eyes, and I saw him make the conscious decision to let go of the control he gripped so tightly. Okay. I'm here. Present. What do we do now? Smiled. Now we finish our food, and then I'm going to introduce you to the concept of a movie night. No work. No phones. Just us and whatever ridiculous romantic comedy I can find. I don't watch romantic comedies. You do now. 2 hours later, Sebastian was actually laughing at the absurd plot of the movie I'd chosen. His arm around my shoulders, my head resting on his chest. Felt domestic. Normal. Like we were a real couple instead of two people bound by contract and convenience. This is completely unrealistic, he commented as the credits rolled. No one makes life-altering decisions based on a chance meeting in an airport. It's a movie. It's supposed to be romantic, not realistic. Romance isn't realistic. I tilted my head to look up at him. I don't know. Is it? His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. I'm starting to think maybe it could be. With the right person. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and nothing like the desperate hunger of last night. This was tender. Exploring. A promise of time and patience and the possibility of something more. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were dark with desire but also something softer. Something that looked dangerously like affection. Stay with me tonight, I whispered. Not in the guest room. Here. Claire, are you sure? No. But I'm choosing to be reckless anyway. He smiled, that real smile I was learning to treasure, and pulled me closer. Then let's be reckless together. We moved to the bedroom, and this time when we came together it was different. Slower. More intentional. Last night had been about finally giving in to attraction. Tonight was about choice. About consciously deciding to try for something more. Afterwards, lying in his arms in the darkness, I listened to his heartbeat steady beneath my ear and tried not to think about the timer ticking down on our arrangement. 2 years minus a week. 103 weeks remaining. Felt like forever and not nearly long enough. What are you thinking? Sebastian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. That I'm probably making a huge mistake. Probably. His arms tightened around me. But at least it's a mistake we're making together. That's not as comforting as you think it is. I know. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. But it's the best I can offer right now. Honesty and presence and the promise that I'll try. I suppose that's better than nothing. Damning with faint praise. I smiled against his chest. Give me time. I might upgrade you to better than expected, if you keep trying. Such high standards. We fell into comfortable silence, and I felt him relaxing beside me. His breathing evening out as sleep pulled at him. This man who never stopped working, never slowed down, falling asleep in my bed because I'd asked him to stay. Sebastian, I whispered. Thank you. For trying. His arms tightened around me one more time. Thank you for making me want to. As I drifted off to sleep, secure in his embrace, I let myself hope that maybe Olivia was right. Maybe there was a chance this could be more than a contract. More than a business arrangement. Maybe we could write our own ending. Even if that ending was still 2 years away. Chapter 5. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of cautious happiness that felt both wonderful and terrifying. Sebastian and I fell into a rhythm. Breakfast together before he left for the office, dinner when he returned, evenings spent in comfortable companionship. He started coming home earlier, turning down late meetings, delegating more to his team. Small changes, but significant for a man who'd made work his entire identity. We hadn't made any grand declarations. Hadn't redefined what we were to each other beyond trying. But the separate bedrooms had become a polite fiction. Most nights, we fell asleep tangled together in either his bed or mine. I'd started to let myself believe this could work. That maybe the contract didn't have to mean anything. That maybe 2 years could turn into forever. I should have known better. It was a Tuesday morning when everything began to unravel. I was having coffee on the terrace when Sebastian emerged from his study. His expression thunderous. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. My stomach dropped at his tone. "What's wrong?" "There's a gala this Saturday. The Thornwood Foundation annual fundraiser. It's the biggest social event of the year for my family, And everyone who matters in New York society will be there. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was stressed. My mother has been asking about you constantly. When you'll meet the extended family. When we'll make our first public appearance as a couple beyond business dinners. Okay. So we go to the gala. We've handled events before. This is different. This isn't 30 people at a business dinner where everyone is focused on deals and investments. This is 300 people, all of whom will be scrutinizing every detail of our relationship. Looking for cracks, for signs this marriage is what everyone suspects it is. A convenience for the trust. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. What are you really worried about, Sebastian? He turned to face me, and I saw something in his expression that made my chest tighten. Fear. He was afraid. I'm worried I'll fail you. That I won't be able to give them the performance they're expecting. That I'll be too stiff, too formal, and everyone will see through us. Through us. Or through you. I stood crossing to him. Sebastian, what's really going on? He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was trying to find the right words. Finally he said, My mother called last night, after you'd gone to bed. She said she's never seen me so happy, that she can't wait to get to know you better, that she thinks you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. That's good, isn't it? It's a lie, Claire. All of it. She's happy because she thinks we're in love. Thinks this is a real marriage with a real future. And Saturday night, when we're on display for the entire family, for all of New York society, I'm terrified she's going to see the truth. What truth? That I'm using you. That this is exactly what she's always accused me of. Treating relationships like business transactions. That her son is just like her father-in-law, cold and calculating and incapable of real connection. The pain in his voice broke something in me. I reached up, framing his face with my hands, forcing him to look at me. Sebastian, listen to me. This started as a transaction, yes. But these last few weeks, you falling asleep in my bed, making me laugh over terrible takeout, actually watching movies instead of working, that's not performance. That's real. Is it? His hands came up to grip my wrists, not pulling away but holding on like I was an anchor. Or am I just better at playing the part than I thought? You tell me. When you kiss me, is that performance? When you hold me at night, is that calculation? I don't know anymore. His voice cracked. I don't know where the act ends and reality begins. I dropped my hands, stepping back. The distance between us suddenly felt like miles instead of inches. Then maybe we need to figure that out before Saturday, I said quietly. Because I can't stand in front of 300 people and pretend to be in love with you if you're not sure whether anything you feel is real. Claire. No. You don't get to do this. Anger was rising now, hot and sharp. You don't get to ask me to risk my heart to take a chance on you, and then tell me you're not sure if any of it means anything. Either this is real or it's not. Either you want me or you don't. But I need to know which it is. It's not that simple. It absolutely is that simple, Sebastian. I could hear my voice rising but couldn't stop it. You're just too scared to admit it. You hide behind work and walls and this idea that you're incapable of feeling anything, but that's bullshit. You feel things. You're just terrified of what happens if you acknowledge it. His expression hardened, that mask of control sliding back into place. And you're terrified of what happens if this doesn't work out. If in 2 years I can't give you the fairy tale ending you're hoping for. At least I'm honest about my limitations. Your limitations are self-imposed. The words came out sharper than I intended. You decided you can't do relationships, can't do emotional intimacy. And now you're so committed to that narrative that you can't see when you're already doing it. This is exactly why I didn't want this. He stepped back, putting more distance between us. This is why I wanted clear boundaries. Because it gets messy and complicated and people get hurt. People are already hurt, Sebastian. I'm already hurt. You asked me to try to open up to let you in. And I did. And now you're retreating because it's getting real and you're scared. I'm not retreating. Yes, you are. Tears were burning in my eyes now. The second your mother suggests this might be something meaningful, you panic. You start questioning everything, creating distance, convincing yourself it's all fake so you don't have to risk actually caring about someone. Silence fell between us, heavy and painful. Sebastian's hands were clenched into fists at his sides. His jaw so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Maybe you're right," he said finally, his voice cold. "Maybe I am retreating. Maybe I'm not capable of this. Maybe you should have listened when I told you that from the beginning." The words hit like a physical blow. "So that's it. One moment of doubt and you're ready to give up. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward." The accusation hung in the air between us. "You're taking the easy way out instead of fighting for something that could be amazing. And you're romanticizing a business arrangement into some kind of love story because you need there to be a happy ending." His eyes were ice cold now, all the warmth from the past weeks gone. "We had a deal, Claire. 2 years. That's all this ever was." I felt something crack inside my chest. "Get out. Claire. Get out of my rooms. Now." He stared at me for a long moment, something flickering in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or pain. But then the mask settled firmly back into place and he turned and left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. I sank onto the sofa, my whole body shaking. 3 weeks. It had taken 3 weeks for me to fall for him. And one conversation to shatter everything we'd been building. My phone rang. Olivia. I almost didn't answer, but she'd only keep calling. "Hey," I managed, my voice thick with unshed tears. "Claire. What's wrong?" Everything. Everything was wrong. I told her about the fight, about Sebastian's doubts, about the gala and his mother, and the way he'd looked at me like I was a complication he needed to eliminate. "That bastard," Olivia breathed when I finished. "Claire, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over? I can be there in an hour." "No, I need to think." "What are you going to do about Saturday?" "The gala. I'd almost forgotten." "I don't know. Play the part, I guess. Smile and pretend and give everyone the performance they're expecting. Or you could tell him to go to hell and let him face his family alone." The idea was tempting. Let Sebastian deal with the consequences of his emotional cowardice. But that would mean forfeiting my end of the contract. My mother's treatment. Olivia's tuition. Everything I'd sacrificed for. I can't. The contract. Screw the contract. He's the one breaking the terms by being emotionally unavailable after asking you to open up. That's not how contracts work, Liv. Maybe it should be. She sighed. "Look, just promise me you'll take care of yourself. Don't let him make you feel like this is your fault. He's the one who's scared. He's the one running away." After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my sitting room and tried to figure out what I felt beyond the hurt and anger. Disappointment. That was part of it. I'd actually started to believe Sebastian could change, could open up, could be more than the cold businessman he presented to the world. But underneath the disappointment was something else. Understanding, maybe. Because I'd seen his face when he talked about his mother's expectations. Seen the fear of failing her, of being exactly what he'd always been told Thornwood men were, incapable of real love. He wasn't running from me. He was running from himself. From the possibility that he could be different from his father and grandfather. From the terrifying reality that he might actually be capable of the very thing he'd spent his life insisting he couldn't do. The knowledge didn't make it hurt less. But it did make it more complicated. A soft knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Chen's voice. "Mrs. Thornwood, Mr. Sebastian asked me to bring you this." I opened the door to find her holding an envelope. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." She hesitated. For what it's worth, I've never seen Mr. Sebastian as unsettled as he's been these past few hours. He's pacing in his study like a caged animal. Good. He should be unsettled. A hint of a smile crossed her face. Indeed. But perhaps he just needs time to figure out what he's feeling. He's not accustomed to it. She left, And I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Blair. Sorry. I'm sorry for doubting what we have, for retreating when I should have stayed, for letting fear dictate my actions. You were right about everything. I am a coward. I am running. I am terrified. But not for the reasons you think. I'm not afraid of this not working. I'm afraid of how much I want it to work. I'm afraid of how completely you've upended my carefully controlled life in just a few weeks. I'm afraid that what I feel for you is already beyond my ability to manage or contain. My father died at his desk because work was the only thing he knew how to do. He loved my mother, I think, but he didn't know how to show it. Didn't know how to be anything other than the perfect Thornwood patriarch. And she lived in that beautiful house, married to a man who was always there but never truly present, until loneliness became her constant companion. I promised myself I would never do that to someone. Never marry out of obligation and then fail to give them what they deserved. It's why I structured our arrangement the way I did. Clear terms, definite end date, no false promises. But then you looked at me like I was worth figuring out. Like underneath the suits and the ice, there might be someone worth knowing. And I started to believe it too. The truth is, I don't know where the performance ends and reality begins because with you, everything feels real. Every touch, every conversation, every moment we spend together. And that terrifies me because I don't know how to be that person. Don't know how to be someone's husband in any real sense. But I want to learn. If you'll still let me. Saturday night, I'll introduce you to my family as my wife. Not because the contract requires it, but because I'm proud to have you beside me. And maybe, if you can forgive my momentary cowardice, we can find a way to make this real. Whatever real means for us. Sebastian. I read the letter 3 times, my anger softening into something more complex. He was trying. In his own broken, uncertain way, he was trying. But was trying enough? Could someone as damaged as Sebastian really learn to be in a relationship? Or would we spend the next 2 years, or however long this lasted, in a cycle of him opening up and then retreating whenever things got too intense? I thought about my mother fighting cancer with everything she had. About Olivia, pursuing her dreams because I'd made this choice. About the contract I'd signed and the life I'd agreed to. And I thought about Sebastian pacing in his study, probably terrified I'd leave. Probably convinced he'd destroyed the one real thing he'd had in years. I pulled out my phone and typed a message. Your study. 10 minutes. His response was immediate. I'll be here. I changed into jeans and a sweater, needing the armor of comfortable clothes. Then I walked through the mansion to his study, my heart pounding. He was standing by the window when I entered, his posture rigid with tension. He turned as I closed the door, and I saw the fear in his eyes. Claire, let me talk first. I crossed my arms, needing the barrier. What you did this morning was not okay. You asked me to open up, to take a chance on you. And then the second it got difficult, you retreated behind your walls and acted like I was foolish for believing this could be real. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not finished. I held up a hand. But your letter. I understand why you're scared. I understand that this is new territory for you and you don't have a roadmap. I even understand that watching your father fail at marriage makes you terrified you'll do the same thing. His jaw tightened but he stayed silent. Here's what I need from you, Sebastian. I need honesty. When you're scared, you tell me. When you're confused about what you're feeling, you tell me. What you don't get to do is make unilateral decisions about what this relationship is or isn't based on your fear. You're right. I also need you to actually try. Not just say you're trying but do the work. That means therapy, probably. It means learning how to identify and communicate your emotions instead of defaulting to cold businessman mode every time things get intense. I'll do it. Whatever you need. I studied his face, looking for signs of the mask, the performance. But all I saw was raw sincerity. And Saturday night, I continued, we're going to that gala. We're going to meet your family. And you're going to introduce me as your wife and mean it. Not because the contract requires it, but because you want to. I do want to. He took a step closer. Claire, I meant every word in that letter. I'm terrified of how much you've come to mean to me. But I'm more terrified of losing you. Then don't push me away again. I won't. I swear. Another step closer. Close enough now that I could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. Can you forgive me? Thought about it. Really thought about it. About whether I could trust him not to do this again. Not to retreat every time things got real. I can forgive you, I said finally. But Sebastian, if you do this again, if you pull away and shut down and act like what we have doesn't matter, I'm done. Contract or no contract, I won't live like your mother did, married to someone who's there but never truly present. I understand. Do you? 'Cause I need you to really understand. I'm all in on this. I'm already falling for you, and that's terrifying for me too. But I'm doing it anyway. I need you to meet me halfway. Something shifted in his expression. Wonder, maybe, or fear, or hope. You're falling for me. Yes, you idiot. Why else would I be this angry with you? He closed the remaining distance between us, his hands coming up to frame my face with heartbreaking gentleness. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you've got me anyway. I let myself lean into his touch. Don't make me regret it. I'll spend every day trying not to. He kissed me then, soft and reverent, like I was something precious he'd almost lost. I'm falling for you too, Claire. I don't know how to do it gracefully or without panicking, but I am. Then we'll figure it out together. Messy and imperfect, and probably with more fights like this morning. I can live with that. His forehead rested against mine. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for writing that letter instead of just letting me stay angry. We stood there for a long moment, holding each other, both of us shaking slightly from the aftermath of the fight and the intensity of what we'd just admitted. So, Sebastian said finally, pulling back to look at me. Therapy. Definitely therapy. I'll have Jennifer find someone. And Saturday night, I introduce you to my family as my wife. The woman who's changing my life. The person I'm falling for even though it terrifies me. He smiled, that real smile I treasured. Think you can handle 300 people scrutinizing us? With you beside me. I can handle anything. That's my girl. His girl. The possessiveness should have bothered me. Instead, it made warmth bloom in my chest. We had a long way to go. Sebastian had years of emotional walls to dismantle, and I had my own fears about whether this could really work. But standing there in his study, his arms around me and the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, I let myself believe. Maybe we could make this real. Maybe 2 years didn't have to be the end of the story. Maybe, just maybe, we could write our own ending after all. Chapter 6. The dress hanging in my closet looked like it cost more than my first car. Midnight blue silk that shimmered when it caught the light, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that flowed like water. The back was open, plunging low enough to make me nervous. It was elegant and sophisticated and absolutely nothing like anything I'd ever worn. You look like a princess, Anna breathed as she finished with my hair, sweeping it into an elegant updo with a few tendrils framing my face. I looked like someone playing dress-up in a life that wasn't mine. Mrs. Thornwood. Simone, who'd been flown in specially for tonight along with Anna, touched up my lipstick one final time. You're going to be the most beautiful woman there. I doubted that. The Thornwood Foundation Gala would be filled with women who'd been bred for this, who knew instinctively how to navigate high society, how to make small talk with billionaires, how to look effortlessly elegant while I was fighting not to trip in 4-inch heels. Knock on the door. Sebastian's voice. Claire, are you ready? Come in. He entered, and the air left my lungs. Sebastian in a tuxedo was devastating. The formal wear emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame, the crisp white shirt contrasting with his dark hair. He'd shaved, his jaw sharp and clean, and when his eyes met mine, they went dark with appreciation. You're stunning, he said, his voice rough. You're not so bad yourself. Simone and Anna packed up their things, giving us knowing smiles as they left. Alone, Sebastian crossed to me, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. I have something for you. Inside was a necklace, sapphires and diamonds that would perfectly complement the dress, arranged in an intricate pattern that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Sebastian, I can't. Yes, you can. They belonged to my grandmother. My mother insisted you wear them tonight. His hands were gentle as he fastened the necklace around my throat. She said every Thornwood bride wears them to her first gala. The weight of the jewels felt like responsibility, like legacy, like I was being welcomed into something I didn't entirely understand. How are you feeling? I asked, watching his face in the mirror as he adjusted the clasp. Terrified. You. Same. He met my eyes in the reflection. We don't have to do this. We could claim your ill postpone. No. I turned to face him. We're doing this. Together. Like we agreed. Together, he echoed, and pulled me into a kiss that tasted like promise and fear and determination. The car ride to the venue was silent, both of us lost in our thoughts. Sebastian's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing gently, and I squeezed back. The Thornwood Foundation Gala was being held at one of Manhattan's most prestigious hotels. The ballroom transformed into something out of a fairy tale with thousands of flowers and soft lighting and enough elegance to make me feel like I'd stepped into another world. Photographers lined the entrance. Actual paparazzi. Here to capture photos of society's elite. Sebastian's hand settled at the small of my back as we stepped out of the car, protective and possessive. Smile, he murmured in my ear. And remember, you belong here as much as anyone. I didn't believe it, but I smiled anyway. Flashes went off as we walked the short red carpet. Sebastian's name was called from multiple directions, photographers shouting for us to look their way, to pose together. He pulled me close, his arm around my waist, and for those few moments, we played our parts perfectly. Inside, the noise level increased dramatically. 300 people in formal wear, champagne flowing, string quartet playing in the corner. It was overwhelming and intimidating and everything I'd feared. Sebastian! A woman's voice, warm and familiar. Victoria appeared through the crowd, elegant in emerald silk, her face lighting up when she saw us. And Claire, darling, you look absolutely radiant. She pulled me into an embrace, and I felt some of my tension ease. At least one person here was genuinely happy to see me. The family is dying to meet you, Victoria said, linking her arm through mine. Come, let me introduce you before Sebastian gets pulled into business conversations. Mother, I thought we agreed. Oh hush, you can have her back in a few minutes. I'm just going to parade her around to the relatives. Victoria winked at me. Don't worry, I'll protect you from the worst of them. Sebastian's expression was torn between amusement and concern, but he nodded. I'll find you in a bit. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, I'll handle it, I assured him. Victoria led me through the crowd, introducing me to an overwhelming number of aunts, uncles, and cousins who all seemed to have very specific opinions about Sebastian finally getting married. About time he settled down, one aunt declared. We were beginning to think he'd die alone in that office. Such a shame he didn't marry the Hartley girl, another whispered, not quite quietly enough. She would have understood the family business. I think Claire is lovely, a younger cousin said warmly. Sebastian clearly adores her. I've never seen him smile so much. The comments swirled around me, some kind, some cutting, all assessing. I kept my smile in place and my responses polite, but by the time Victoria released me back to Sebastian's care, I felt like I'd run a marathon. How bad was it? Sebastian asked, handing me a glass of champagne. Your family has a lot of opinions. They always do. Ignore them. His hand found the small of my back again. Dance with me. I'm not very good at formal dancing. Neither am I, really. But it's expected, and it gets us away from the crowd for a few minutes. He led me onto the dance floor, one hand at my waist, the other clasping mine. The orchestra was playing something classical and romantic, and despite my nervousness, I found myself relaxing into his embrace. "You're doing beautifully," he murmured against my hair. "Much better than I am. You're barely talking to anyone. This is supposed to be your foundation's event. I'm talking to the only person who matters." His eyes met mine, serious and intent. "Claire, about what I said in my letter." "Sebastian, there you are." A booming voice interrupted. A large man with Sebastian's eyes approached, a petite blonde woman on his arm. "You can't hide your bride all night." James said she was lovely, but he didn't do her justice. "Uncle Robert," Sebastian said, tension entering his shoulders. "Aunt Patricia. This is my wife, Claire." "A teacher, Victoria tells me," Robert said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that profession. "How quaint." "I find shaping young minds to be quite fulfilling," I replied evenly. "I'm sure. Though I imagine you'll be too busy with society obligations to continue that now." Patricia's smile was sharp. "Being a Thornwood requires certain commitments. Claire will continue her work as she sees fit," Sebastian said, his voice hard. "She's not giving up her career." "Of course not," Robert backpedaled slightly. "Admirable, really. Though once children come." "There won't be children," Sebastian cut him off. "Claire and I have discussed it. We're not interested in starting a family." The words shouldn't have hurt. We'd never discussed children, but of course there wouldn't be any in a 2-year arrangement. But hearing him say it so definitively, so coldly, felt like a door slamming shut on possibilities I hadn't even realized I was considering. "No children. But Sebastian, the Thornwood line. We'll be perfectly fine with James's future offspring," Sebastian said firmly. "If you'll excuse us." He steered me away, his jaw tight with barely suppressed anger. "I'm sorry about them," he said once we were out of earshot. "Robert has always been insufferable about family legacy. You've never mentioned wanting children." Kept my voice neutral. "I don't. I barely know how to be in a relationship. Bringing children into that would be irresponsible." He paused. "Unless." "Do you want children?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications. Did I want children? Eventually, yes. But not in a marriage with a 2-year expiration date. Not with a man who was still figuring out how to let himself feel anything. "Someday maybe," I said carefully. "But you're right. Now isn't the time." Something flickered in his expression, relief or regret I couldn't tell. Before I could analyze it further, Melissa Hartley appeared, resplendent in red silk and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sebastian, Claire, how wonderful to see you again." Her gaze raked over me, assessing. "That's quite a necklace. Family heirloom." "My grandmother's," Sebastian confirmed. "How traditional. I'm sure Victoria is thrilled you're finally embracing family customs." Her tone suggested she thought otherwise. "Richard is over by the bar if you want to discuss the Chicago deal. I'll keep Claire company." It was a trap and we both knew it. But refusing would be obviously rude. "I'll be fine," I told Sebastian quietly. "Go." He hesitated, then leaned in to press a kiss to my temple. 5 minutes. "Then I'm coming back." Melissa watched him go with an expression I couldn't quite read. When she turned back to me, her smile had sharpened. "You've certainly landed on your feet," she said. "From kindergarten teacher to Mrs. Sebastian Thornwood. Quite a leap." "I'm still a kindergarten teacher. Marriage doesn't change who I am." "Doesn't it?" She sipped her champagne. "You're wearing $250,000 in jewels and a dress that costs more than most people make in 6 months. You're living in the Thornwood estate, attending society events, playing the role of devoted wife. That's quite different from grading finger paintings." "I can do both." "Can you?" Most women who marry into this world find they have to choose. The demands are too great, the expectations too high. Her eyes glittered. "Of course, most women who marry Thornwood men at least get the consolation of genuine affection. Love even." My stomach clenched. "What are you implying?" "Oh, nothing. Just that Sebastian has always been very clear about his limitations. His inability to form emotional attachments. I'd hate to see you get hurt when you realize you're just another business acquisition to him. You don't know anything about our relationship. Don't I? She leaned closer, her voice dropping. I've known Sebastian since we were children. I've watched him systematically eliminate anything from his life that requires emotional investment. His last girlfriend lasted 3 months before she realized he would never love her. The one before that, 6 weeks. I'm his wife, not his girlfriend. A wife he needed for his grandfather's trust. Everyone knows about the requirements, Claire. Everyone knows this marriage is a convenience. Her smile was pitying now. I just hope you didn't make the mistake of falling for him. Because Sebastian Thornwood doesn't have a heart to give. Before I could respond, Sebastian appeared at my side. His expression thunderous. Melissa, if you'll excuse us, I need to speak with my wife. His hand was firm on my elbow, guiding me away before she could protest. He led me through a side door into a quiet corridor, empty except for a few waitstaff hurrying past. What did she say to you? He demanded. Nothing I didn't already know. I pulled my arm from his grasp. That this marriage is for your trust. That you don't do emotional attachment. That I'm foolish for thinking otherwise. Claire, is she wrong? About your past relationships. About the way you systematically eliminate anything that requires feeling something. I could hear my voice rising but couldn't stop it. Because you told me essentially the same things before we got married. That was before. Before what? Before you decided you might want to try. Before you wrote me a letter admitting you're falling for me. I laughed, but it came out bitter. How do I know that's real, Sebastian? How do I know you're not just better at playing the part than you thought? It was throwing his own words back at him, but they felt true in this moment, surrounded by his world, confronted with the reality of who he'd been before me. You want to know how you know it's real. His hands came up to frame my face. His eyes blazing. Because I've never been this terrified in my life. Because I stood in that ballroom listening to my uncle talk about children and legacy and realized I want that with you. Actually want it, not just as part of some arrangement, but because the thought of a future without you makes it hard to breathe. I stared at him, my heart pounding. You said you didn't want children. I said now wasn't the time. I didn't say never. His thumb stroked my cheeks. Claire, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if in 2 years we'll extend this arrangement or if we'll tear up the contract entirely and start over on our own terms. But I know that when I think about my life, I can't imagine it without you in it. You're just saying that because Melissa got in my head. I'm saying it because it's true. He pulled me closer. I'm saying it because I've spent 3 hours tonight watching other men look at you and feeling violently possessive. Because every time someone questions our marriage, I want to tell them exactly how real it is. Because I'm falling in love with you, Claire. And that terrifies me more than anything Melissa or my family could say. The words hung in the air between us. Falling in love. Not fallen, he was still too guarded for that, but falling. Moving toward something neither of us had planned for. I'm falling in love with you too, I whispered. And you're right. It's terrifying. He kissed me then, hard and desperate. His hands tangling in my carefully styled hair, probably ruining it. I didn't care. Let the photographs tomorrow show Mrs. Sebastian Thornwood with messy hair and smudged lipstick. Let them speculate about what we were doing in this corridor. Let them see that this was real. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian rested his forehead against mine. We should go back, he said, not moving. Probably. In a minute. We stood there in the empty corridor, holding each other, and I felt something shift and settle in my chest. This was real. Messy and complicated and terrifying, but real. Sebastian. I pulled back to look at him. About what you said. About children and the future and tearing up the contract. I meant it. All of it. Even though we haven't even finished month 1 of year 1. Especially because of that. Because if I feel this strongly after 3 weeks, imagine what 2 years might do. His expression was vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I know it's too soon. I know we're supposed to be taking this slow and figuring things out. But Claire, I don't want an expiration date on us. Neither do I. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. But we still have the contract. The legal requirements for the trust. Then we fulfill them. We stay married for 2 years, access the trust, and then... He paused. Then we decide what we want our marriage to be. Not based on contracts or obligations, but based on this. On us. That sounds like a plan. It's a terrible plan, actually. Completely uncharacteristic of me to suggest something so devoid of clear terms and defined outcomes. Love tends to be devoid of clear terms and defined outcomes, I pointed out. I'm starting to understand that. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Ready to go back and face 300 people who are probably speculating about why we disappeared. Let them speculate. We returned to the ballroom hand in hand, and if anyone noticed my slightly mussed hair or Sebastian's rumpled collar, they were too polite to mention it. Victoria caught my eye from across the room and winked, which suggested she knew exactly what we'd been doing. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and dances and carefully navigated social politics. But through it all, Sebastian stayed close. His hand at my back or his fingers intertwined with mine, making it clear to everyone that we were a unit. As the gala wound down and guests began making their departures, James found us near the coat check. "Well, you two certainly gave people something to talk about," he said with a grin. Disappearing mid-gala, returning looking thoroughly ravished. Very scandalous. "Mind your own business, James," Sebastian said, but without heat. "This is my business. You're my brother, and she's my favorite sister-in-law." He turned to me. "You are my favorite, by the way. Miles better than any of the women he dated before. That's because she's not just dating me. She's my wife." Sebastian's arm tightened around my waist. "And if you're quite finished embarrassing us both." "Oh, I'm just getting started. Mother wants to have you both over for Sunday dinner. She's decided she adores Claire and wants to hear all about how you swept her off her feet." "We'll check our schedule," Sebastian said diplomatically. Translation: "He'll try to find an excuse to get out of it," James Stage whispered to me. "Don't let him. Mother's Sunday dinners are legendary. And she'll be offended if you don't come." "We'll be there," I promised, ignoring Sebastian's look of betrayal. On the drive home, Sebastian pulled me close in the back of the car, and I rested my head on his shoulder, exhausted but happy. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not letting Melissa poison you against me. For believing me when I said this is real. For agreeing to Sunday dinner with my mother, even though I'll probably spend the entire meal being interrogated about our relationship. That's what wives do. Support their husbands through awkward family dinners. Is that in the contract?" "It's in the revised contract. The one we're writing as we go." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I like this contract better." "Me too." Back at the estate, we climbed the stairs together, still in our formal wear, both too tired to do anything but fall into bed. Sebastian's bed this time, the one that was starting to feel like ours. As I drifted off to sleep in his arms, the sapphire necklace carefully removed and returned to its case, I thought about the evening. About Melissa's poisonous words and Robert's judgment, and the 300 people who'd assessed us and found us wanting or fascinating or suspicious. None of it mattered. What mattered was this: Sebastian's steady heartbeat beneath my ear. His arms around me. His whispered confession of falling in love. We still had a long way to go. Still had demons to fight and walls to dismantle. Still had almost 2 years of a contract to fulfill. But for the first time since signing that agreement in the lawyer's office, I believed we might actually make it. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to. Chapter 7. Sunday dinner at Victoria's townhouse was supposed to be casual. Family only, she'd promised. Nothing to worry about. She'd lied. When Sebastian and I arrived at the elegant brownstone in the Upper East Side, we found not just Victoria and James, but also Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia, two cousins I vaguely remembered from the gala. And, most surprisingly, Sebastian's grandfather's former business partner, Edmund Carlyle, a man in his 80s who apparently still wielded considerable influence in the family. "Mother," Sebastian said through gritted teeth as Victoria greeted us at the door. "You said casual family dinner. This is casual, darling. And they're all family. Edmund is practically family." She kissed my cheek warmly. "Don't look so terrified, Claire. I promise they'll behave." The townhouse was beautiful, smaller and more intimate than the estate, decorated with photographs and personal touches that made it feel like an actual home. Victoria led us to a sitting room where the others were already gathered with cocktails. "Sebastian. And the bride." Edmund rose with surprising agility for his age, his sharp eyes assessing me with interest. "My dear, you're even lovelier than the photographs in the society pages." "Thank you, Mr. Carlyle. Please call me Edmund. We're family now." He gestured to the sofa beside him. "Come sit. Tell me about yourself." "Victoria tells me you're a teacher." Sebastian's hand tightened on mine as we sat, a silent warning to be careful. Edmund Carlyle hadn't built a fortune by being charming. He'd done it by being ruthless and perceptive. "I teach kindergarten," I confirmed. "Or I did. I'm taking the fall semester off to adjust to everything. Wise. Being a Thornwood requires certain adjustments." His gaze shifted to Sebastian. "Though I must say, I was surprised by your marriage, Sebastian. You've always been so adamant about remaining unattached." "People change," Sebastian replied evenly. "Indeed they do. Especially when multi-billion-dollar trusts are at stake." The words were casual, but the implication was clear. He knew. Of course he knew. He'd probably helped structure the trust in the first place. "Edmund," Victoria warned. "Oh, don't look at me like that, Victoria. We're all adults here. We all know the terms of Harold's trust. I helped draft them after all." He turned back to me, his expression not unkind. "The question is whether this young woman knows what she's gotten herself into." "I know exactly what I've gotten into," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Do you?" "Because Harold's trust requires more than just a marriage certificate. It requires evidence of a genuine marital relationship. Cohabitation, joint finances, the appearance of a real partnership." His eyes were sharp despite his age. Harold was many things, but he wasn't a fool. He knew Sebastian would try to game the system. He built in safeguards. Sebastian's jaw was so tight I worried he might crack a tooth. "Claire and I have a genuine marriage." "I'm sure you do now. But when you married, what was it a month ago? Was it genuine then?" Edmund leaned forward. "I ask because I'm one of the trustees, Sebastian. And if I have reason to believe this marriage is fraudulent, I'm obligated to investigate." The room went silent. Robert and Patricia exchanged uncomfortable glances. James looked murderous. Victoria set down her drink with deliberate care. "Edmund," she said, her voice ice-cold, "I invited you to meet my new daughter-in-law, not to interrogate her about the validity of her marriage. I'm simply doing my due diligence." "You're being incredibly rude." Victoria stood, drawing herself to her full height. "Sebastian and Claire's relationship is none of your business unless they choose to make it your business. Now either apologize or leave my home." Edmund studied Victoria for a long moment, then smiled. "You always did have steel in your spine, Victoria." "I apologize. I simply wanted to ensure the boy wasn't making a terrible mistake. The only mistake would be losing someone as remarkable as Claire because of archaic trust requirements and family pressure." Victoria's gaze swept the room. "Now, shall we move to the dining room? Dinner is ready." The meal was tense despite Victoria's attempts at normal conversation. Edmund continued to ask probing questions. How we'd met, how quickly we'd married, what our plans were for the future. I answered as honestly as I could without revealing the true nature of our original arrangement, very aware that one wrong word could cost Sebastian everything. And children? Edmund asked over dessert. Any plans to start a family? Eventually perhaps, Sebastian said smoothly. But we're in no rush. We want to enjoy being newlyweds first. Sensible. Though at your age, Sebastian, you shouldn't wait too long. The Thornwood line. We'll be fine, James interjected. Plenty of cousins having children. The line isn't exactly at risk of dying out. Still, there's something to be said for direct succession. Edmund, enough. Victoria's voice was sharp. Their reproductive choices are absolutely none of your concern. Finally, mercifully, the dinner ended. Edmund made his exit with promises to check in on us, which sounded more like a threat than friendly concern. Robert and Patricia left soon after with stiff goodbyes, and the cousins departed with apologetic smiles. When it was just Victoria, James, Sebastian, and me, the tension in the room eased considerably. I am so sorry, Victoria said, pouring herself a generous glass of wine. I had no idea Edmund would be so invasive. He's always been invasive, Sebastian replied, his arm around my shoulders. He and grandfather were cut from the same cloth. Calculating. Suspicious. Convinced everyone is trying to cheat them. The question is whether he believes us, I said quietly. Does it matter? James asked. You're legally married. You live together. What more proof does he need? Harold's trust specifies that the marriage must be genuine, Sebastian explained. Not just legal. Edmund has the authority to investigate, and if he determines the marriage is fraudulent, the trust reverts to charity and I'm cut off entirely. Can he actually do that? I felt panic rising in my chest. Prove a marriage is fraudulent. If he digs deep enough, possibly. He could question staff about our sleeping arrangements. Review financial records to see if we're actually living as a married couple. Interview people we knew before the wedding to establish a timeline. Sebastian's expression was grim. If he's determined, he'll find something to question. Then we make sure there's nothing to question, Victoria said firmly. You're married. You're living together. You care about each other. I can see that clearly, even if Edmund is too cynical to believe it. All you have to do is live your lives normally. Easier said than done when you're being investigated, James pointed out. We drove home in heavy silence, both of us processing the implications of Edmund's suspicions. Back at the estate, Sebastian disappeared into his study without a word, and I found myself alone in the sitting room, staring at nothing. My phone rang. Olivia. How was dinner with the in-laws? She asked cheerfully. I told her everything. Edmund's questions, his threats to investigate, the risk to Sebastian's trust and by extension, to our entire arrangement. Claire, this is serious, Olivia said when I finished. If they prove the marriage was fraudulent from the start, what happens to Mom's treatment? To my tuition? I don't know. The contract probably has clauses about breach of agreement. We might have to return everything. Can we even do that? Mom's treatment has already started. The bills are already being paid. I closed my eyes against sudden tears. I don't know, Liv. I don't know what happens if this all falls apart. Then don't let it fall apart. You said you and Sebastian are falling for each other, right? That it's becoming real. Yes, but that doesn't change how it started. Doesn't change that we married for the trust and my family's debts. So make it real retroactively, Olivia suggested. Create a believable story about how you met and fell in love before the wedding. Get your stories straight. Make sure there's nothing for this Edmund person to find. That's lying. That's survival. Claire, Mom is doing so well on this treatment. The doctors are optimistic. You can't let some suspicious old man take that away because of technicalities. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness and thought about lies and truth and the murky space between them. Sebastian and I had married for practical reasons, yes. But what we had now was real. The feelings were real. The relationship was real. Did it matter that it hadn't started that way? I found Sebastian still in his study, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. "We need to talk," I said from the doorway. He looked up, his expression weary. "I know. Come in." I settled into the chair across from his desk. Olivia pointed out something. "If Edmund proves our marriage was fraudulent, we might have to return everything. The money for Mom's treatment, Liv's tuition, all of it." "The contract does have clauses about breach of terms," Sebastian confirmed. "If we're found to have entered the marriage fraudulently, I would be obligated to reclaim all payments made on your behalf. Can you even do that? Some of that money is already spent. Which is why we need to make sure Edmund doesn't find proof of fraud." He ran a hand through his hair. "The problem is, there are people who knew this marriage was arranged. My lawyer, your sister, James. If Edmund questions any of them, they won't talk. James wouldn't betray you, and Olivia would never risk Mom's treatment. Gerald might, though. He's ethically obligated to truthful testimony if questioned under legal proceedings." Sebastian's expression was grim. "And the staff might have noticed things. The separate bedrooms initially. The way we barely knew each other when you first arrived. So we need a different story. One that covers all of that." "You mean we lie?" "I mean we reframe the truth." I leaned forward. "Sebastian, what we have now is real. The feelings are real. We're falling in love, you said so yourself. Why can't that have started before the wedding?" "Because it didn't." "Are you sure?" I held his gaze. "You said you saw me at the hospital months before you approached me with the arrangement. That you were struck by me even then. What if that's when it started? What if you were already half in love with me before you ever offered the contract? Claire, think about it. It explains why you chose me specifically instead of any other woman who needed money. It explains the elaborate wardrobe and the careful attention to my preferences. It explains why you've been so protective, so possessive." I stood, moving around the desk to face him directly. "What if the contract was just an excuse? A way to get me into your life when you didn't know how to approach me normally?" He stared at me, something shifting in his expression. "That's actually not that far from the truth." "What do you mean?" Sebastian stood, turning to look out the window at the dark grounds. "I told you I saw you at the hospital. What I didn't tell you was that I went back. Multiple times. I told myself it was to monitor your father's condition, to ensure he was a viable candidate for the arrangement I was planning. But really, I just wanted to see you again." My breath caught. "Sebastian. I learned your schedule. Knew when you'd be there. I watched you read to your father, comfort your sister, handle impossibly difficult circumstances with grace and strength. And I wanted." He turned back to me. "I wanted to be someone you'd look at the way you looked at them. With affection and trust and hope. Why didn't you just ask me out? Like a normal person?" "Because I'm not normal. Because I'm Sebastian Thornwood. And everyone who approaches me wants something. I needed to know you were different. And the contract gave me that." He crossed to me, his hands framing my face. "But you're right. The contract was an excuse. I was already half in love with you before I ever proposed the arrangement. I just didn't know it until you moved in, and I couldn't imagine my life without you." Tears were streaming down my face now. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I barely admitted it to myself. Because it's terrifying to realize you've built an elaborate business arrangement around someone you're falling for because you don't know how to simply fall." His thumbs wiped at my tears. "But if we're going to tell Edmund a story, let it be this one. The truth just rearranged. Saw you. Fell for you. I used the contract as an excuse to get close to you. And you, needing to save your family, agreed. But the feelings were there from the start, even if we didn't acknowledge them. Do you think he'll believe it? I think it's the truth. Or close enough that it won't feel like lying." He kissed me softly. "And I think if we're going to fight for this marriage, for this life we're building, we need to believe it ourselves." "I do believe it." I wrapped my arms around him. I believe you were meant to find me. That this whole bizarre situation was the universe's way of putting us together. I don't believe in fate. You don't have to. I believe enough for both of us. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and pulled me into a deeper kiss. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Tomorrow we tell the story to the staff. Make sure they understand how we met, how the relationship developed. We get our narratives aligned. And if Edmund questions them, then they tell the truth. That I was smitten with you from the moment I saw you. That this marriage might have started with practical considerations, but it's built on something real. You were smitten. I smiled despite the seriousness of the situation. Completely. Devastatingly. Still am. His arms tightened around me. And I'll fight Edmund and anyone else who tries to take you away from me. Even if it costs you the trust. He was quiet for a moment, and I held my breath, waiting for his answer. The trust gave me the excuse to marry you, he said finally. But if I had to choose between the money and you, I'd choose you. Every time. Sebastian. I mean it, Claire. I spent 35 years building an empire, making billions, proving I could exceed every expectation. And I was miserable. Me. Then you walked into my life. Or I engineered you walking into my life. And suddenly I understood what I'd been missing. His eyes held mine. I don't need billions of dollars. I need you. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into it. Love and fear and determination and hope. When we finally broke apart, both of us were shaking. We're going to make this work, I said fiercely. We're going to convince Edmund and the trustees and anyone else who questions us. 'Cause this is real. We're real. We're real, he agreed. That night we lay in bed together. His bed which had truly become ours, and talked for hours. We built our story, weaving together truth and timing until we had something that felt authentic because it was. We had fallen for each other. The contract had just been the catalyst. What if this doesn't work? I asked as dawn began to lighten the sky. What if Edmund digs deeper and finds the lawyer's files or questions the wrong person? Then we fight. We get our own lawyers, contest his authority, tie it up in court for years if necessary. Sebastian's arms tightened around me. I'm not losing you, Claire. Not to Edmund, not to the trust requirements, not to anything. You might have to. The contract. To hell with the contract. We'll write a new one. One that has nothing to do with trusts or money or obligations. Just you and me, choosing each other. That sounds like a marriage. That's exactly what it is. He tilted my face up to his. Marry me again, Claire. Not because you need money or I need a wife for the trust. But because we choose this. Choose each other. We're already married. Then marry me in your heart. Promise me this is forever, not just 2 years. Promise me we'll fight for this, whatever comes. I thought about the girl who'd walked into that courthouse a month ago. Desperate and scared and willing to sell 2 years of her life to save her family. I thought about the man who'd stood beside her, cold and controlled and convinced he was incapable of love. We'd both been wrong about so many things. I promise, I whispered. Forever. Not just 2 years. Forever, he echoed and sealed it with a kiss. Outside, the sun was rising over the estate, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. New day. A new beginning. Whatever Edmund Carlyle found, whatever investigations he launched, whatever obstacles lay ahead, we'd face them together. Not because we had to, but because we chose to. And that made all the difference. Chapter 8. The investigation began 3 days later. A formal letter arrived from Edmund Carlyle's legal team, requesting documentation of our relationship timeline, financial records showing joint assets, and interviews with household staff. All perfectly legal under the terms of Harold Thornwood's trust agreement. He's not wasting any time, Sebastian said grimly, reading through the letter for the 3rd time. We were in his study, the morning sun streaming through the windows in stark contrast to the dark mood. What do? We comply. Refusing would only make us look guilty. He set the letter down with careful precision. But we also prepare. Make sure everyone knows the story. Make sure there's nothing contradictory for him to find. Over the next week we went into full damage control mode. Sebastian's legal team compiled the requested documentation, our marriage certificate, proof of cohabitation, joint bank accounts we'd hastily established. We sat down with Mrs. Chan and the household staff, explaining that there might be questions about our relationship, that they should simply tell the truth about what they'd observed. Mr. Sebastian has been different since you arrived, Mrs. Chan told me privately one afternoon. Happier. More present. Whatever the circumstances of your marriage, the effect on him has been real. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. And Mrs. Thornwood. She touched my arm gently. Don't let some suspicious old man make you doubt what you have. I've worked for this family for 23 years. I know the difference between performance and genuine affection. The interviews began the following Monday. Edmund's lawyers set up in one of the estate's formal parlors, questioning staff members one by one. Sebastian and I were confined to his study, waiting anxiously for each person to emerge. Anna came out first, looking nervous but resolute. They asked about your sleeping arrangements. I told them you started in separate rooms but have been sharing a bed for weeks now. That I've seen the way Mr. Thornwood looks at you. James, the driver, confirmed he'd witnessed our first meeting at the hospital months before the wedding, a detail Sebastian had asked him to remember from the time Sebastian had monitored my father's condition. The chef mentioned how Sebastian had personally ensured the kitchen was stocked with my favorite foods. The gardener recalled Sebastian asking him to plant peonies, my favorite flower, in the garden shortly after our marriage. Each detail built the narrative we needed. A man falling for a woman, using practical circumstances as an excuse to be near her. By the time Edmund's team finished with the staff interviews 3 days later, I was exhausted from the stress. Sebastian had barely slept, working late into the night reviewing every possible angle Edmund might use to discredit us. We have a problem, his lawyer Gerald said when he arrived for an emergency meeting that Friday evening. Edmund's team has requested an interview with your sister. My stomach dropped. Olivia. She was listed as a witness at the wedding. They want to ask her about the timeline of your relationship, how you and Sebastian met, whether she had any concerns about the marriage being rushed. Gerald's expression was sympathetic. She's not legally obligated to participate since this isn't a criminal investigation, but refusing might look suspicious. Then she'll participate, I said, my mind racing. And she'll tell them the truth. Claire. The truth that Sebastian fell for me months before the wedding. The truth that I was hesitant at first because of the speed, but he convinced me this was real. I looked at Sebastian. That is the truth, isn't it? You did fall for me first. You did convince me to take a chance. Something in his expression softened. Yes, that's the truth. I called Olivia immediately, filling her in on the situation and the story we needed her to corroborate. So I tell them you and Sebastian had been seeing each other for months before the wedding, she confirmed. Not exactly. Sebastian saw me, fell for me, but approached the relationship through the contract because he didn't know how to do it normally. I agreed because I needed to save Mom, but also because I was attracted to him, even if I didn't want to admit it at the time. That's actually kind of romantic in a twisted billionaire stalker way. Olivia. Sorry. But Claire, this is basically the truth. He did fall for you first. You were attracted to him. The contract was just the framework. Pause. I can sell this. I'm getting a doctorate in literature. I know how to tell a compelling story. The interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Edmund's office in Manhattan. Olivia insisted on going alone, refusing to let me or Sebastian accompany her. It'll look more authentic if I'm not being coached, she reasoned. Trust me. Those were the longest 4 hours of my life. Sebastian paced his study while I sat frozen on the sofa, imagining every possible way the interview could go wrong. When Olivia finally called, her voice was shaking. I think I did okay. What did they ask? Everything. When you and Sebastian met. How he acted around you. Whether I thought the marriage was genuine. Whether I had any concerns. She took a breath. I told them the truth, Claire. That Sebastian was clearly smitten from the first time he came to the hospital. That you were reluctant because you didn't want to believe someone like him could actually fall for someone like you. That I encouraged you to take a chance because I could see how he looked at you. And they believed you. I think so. I cried a little when I talked about Mom's illness and how grateful I was that Sebastian was helping. They seemed moved by that. Less suspicious. After we hung up, I relayed everything to Sebastian, who'd stopped pacing to listen intently. She's good, he said. Better than I expected. She's telling the truth. Or a version of it that feels true. I stood, crossing to where he stood by the window. This is exhausting. I hate living under investigation. Having every aspect of our relationship scrutinized. I know. I'm sorry for putting you through this. You didn't put me through anything. Chose this. We both did. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, resting my head against his back. And I'd choose it again. His hands covered mine, squeezing gently. Even knowing what we know now. The complications, the scrutiny, the constant threat of it all falling apart. Especially knowing what I know now. 'Cause it means I know you. Really know you. Not just the controlled businessman everyone else sees. He turned in my arms, pulling me close. Have I told you today that I love you? The words stopped my heart. He'd said he was falling for me, had implied his feelings were deepening, but this was the first time he'd said it so clearly, so completely. No, I whispered. You haven't. I love you, Claire. Completely. Irrevocably. In a way that terrifies me because I've never felt anything like it before. His hands framed my face. Whatever happens with Edmund, with the trust, with any of it, I need you to know that. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I love you too. So much it scares me. Then we can be terrified together. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and for a moment, the investigation and the threats and the uncertainty all faded away. There was just us, just this love we'd stumbled into accidentally but now held on to fiercely. The official results of Edmund's investigation arrived 2 weeks later via courier. Sebastian opened the thick envelope with steady hands, though I could see the tension in his jaw. I held my breath as he read, watching his expression for any sign of the verdict. Finally he looked up, and a slow smile spread across his face. We passed. Edmund has certified the marriage as genuine and recommended to the trustees that I be granted full access to the trust upon completion of the 2-year requirement. Relief crashed over me so powerfully I had to sit down. Really? He believes us. He says the evidence overwhelmingly supports a genuine marital relationship. The staff interviews, your sister's testimony, the timeline of our relationship, our joint financial arrangements. All of it convinced him this is real. Sebastian crossed to me, kneeling in front of my chair. We did it. You did it. We did it together. I cupped his face in my hands. But Sebastian, we still have 18 months on the contract. This isn't over. No, it's not. Edmund will continue to monitor the situation. There will be check-ins, probably annual reviews. But the immediate threat is gone. His expression turned serious. Claire, I've been thinking about the contract and what it means for us. My heart stuttered. What about it? I want to tear it up. Completely. I want us to start over without any of those terms hanging over our heads. But the trust requires 2 years of marriage. It doesn't require a contract between us. We can destroy the original agreement and just be married. No expiration date. No terms about divorce after 2 years. Just us building a life together. What about my family's debts? The money you paid. Consider it a wedding gift. Or a husband supporting his wife's family, which is completely normal and expected. He took my hands. Claire, I don't want to be married to you because of some contract we signed. I want to be married to you because I choose you. Every day. For the rest of my life. That sounds like you're proposing. I am. Not with a contract this time, but with a promise. Marry me again, Claire. Not in a courthouse with lawyers and terms, but in a church or a garden or wherever you want, with our families watching and meaning every word of the vows. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face. You want a real wedding. I want everything with you. A real wedding, a real marriage, a real future. Children if you want them. A life that's ours to build however we choose. His thumbs wiped at my tears. What do you say? What did I say to the man I'd married for money and fallen desperately in love with? The man who'd started as a cold businessman and slowly revealed himself to be capable of such warmth, such love? Yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. He pulled me into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and the beginning of something wonderful. When we finally broke apart, both of us were grinning like idiots. When? Asked. When do you want to do this? As soon as possible. I've waited 35 years to feel this way about someone. I don't want to wait any longer than necessary to make it official. He paused. But it's your wedding. However you want it, whenever you want it, I'll make it happen. Thought about it. About the courthouse wedding that had been cold and practical and everything a wedding shouldn't be. About the possibility of something different this time. Something real and joyful and surrounded by people who actually loved us. Spring, I decided. In the garden here at the estate. Intimate, just family and close friends. Nothing huge or showy, just us. Spring in the garden. I can work with that. He kissed me again. I'll have Jennifer start making arrangements. Unless you want to plan it yourself. We plan it together. Like everything else. Together, he agreed. Always. That evening we told Victoria over dinner at her townhouse. She cried. Actual tears streaming down her face, and pulled me into a fierce embrace. I knew it, she said, laughing through her tears. I knew the moment I met you that you were the one who would finally break through his walls. Oh Claire, I'm so happy for you both. We're still technically married already, Sebastian pointed out. This is just making it official in a different way. This is making it real, Victoria corrected. The first time was for practical reasons. This time is for love. That makes all the difference. James was equally thrilled, offering to help with whatever we needed, and immediately suggesting an elaborate bachelor party that Sebastian firmly rejected. We're already married, James. I'm not having a bachelor party. But you didn't have one the first time. You're robbing me of my best man duties. You can be best man at the actual wedding. That's enough. As we drove home that night, my hand in Sebastian's, I thought about how much had changed in just 2 months. I'd gone from desperate and alone to loved and supported. From playing a role to living authentically. From a contract marriage to real love. What are you thinking? Sebastian asked, bringing my hand to his lips. That I never could have imagined this. That morning in the courthouse, I was terrified and convinced I was making a huge mistake. And now I can't imagine my life any other way. Can't imagine not waking up next to you, not arguing with you about whether to watch romantic comedies, not having you there to hold me when things get hard. Good. 'Cause you're stuck with me now. For better or worse, remember. We haven't actually said those vows yet. Then I'll say them now. He pulled the car over to the side of the road, putting it in park so he could turn to face me fully. I, Sebastian James Thornwood, take you, Claire Elizabeth Fitzgerald Thornwood, to be my lawfully wedded wife. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. My breath caught in my throat. Sebastian. Your turn. I took his hands, my voice shaking with emotion. I, Claire Elizabeth Fitzgerald Thornwood, take you, Sebastian James Thornwood, to be my lawfully wedded husband. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. I now pronounce us husband and wife, Sebastian said solemnly. Again. We kissed there on the side of the road, cars passing by without noticing, and I felt something settle in my chest. This was real. We were real. Whatever had brought us together, contract or fate or simple desperation, didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what we chose to build from here. And we chose each other. Always. Epilogue. 2 years later. The garden was perfect. White roses and peonies draped every surface, their fragrance carried on a warm May breeze. Chairs arranged in neat rows faced an arbor covered in climbing jasmine. String lights hung overhead, ready to illuminate the evening celebration once the sun set. Our second wedding. Our real wedding. I stood in my old sitting room, which had long since been abandoned in favor of sharing Sebastian's suite, smoothing down the ivory silk of my wedding dress. This one was nothing like the cream shift I'd worn to the courthouse. This was lace and silk and dreams made tangible, with a flowing skirt and delicate sleeves and a train that Olivia was currently arranging with careful precision. "You look like a princess," my mother said from her seat by the window, her eyes bright with tears. The clinical trial had worked. She was in remission, stronger than she'd been in years. "I never thought I'd get to see this day." "Neither did I, Mom." I crossed to her, kneeling carefully to avoid wrinkling my dress. "How are you feeling?" "Not too tired. I'm perfect. Happy. Watching my daughter marry the man she loves." She cupped my face. "A man who's clearly devoted to you. The way he looks at you, Claire. That's the real thing." "It is," I agreed softly. A soft knock on the door, then Victoria peeked in. "May I come in? I have something for you." "Of course." She entered, elegant in champagne-colored silk, carrying a small velvet box. "These belonged to Sebastian's grandmother. I gave you her necklace for the gala, but I thought for today you might want her earrings as well. Something old." Inside the box were delicate pearl drops, antique and beautiful. I put them on with trembling fingers. "Something new is the dress," Olivia said, ticking off the traditional list. "Something borrowed." "My veil." I indicated the delicate lace piece draped over a chair. "From Anna. She wore it at her wedding last year." "And something blue?" Victoria asked. I lifted my skirt slightly to reveal the garter Sebastian had given me that morning. Pale blue silk with our initials embroidered in silver thread. "He gave you a garter." Olivia laughed. "That's surprisingly romantic for Sebastian. He's full of surprises these days." I thought about the therapy sessions he'd committed to, the way he'd learned to communicate his feelings instead of retreating behind walls. The small gestures of affection that came more naturally now. Holding my hand without thinking, kissing me goodbye every morning, saying, "I love you," like he'd been doing it his whole life. Music began playing outside, the signal that guests were taking their seats. "That's our cue," Victoria said, kissing my cheek. "I'll see you out there, darling." "And Claire, thank you for loving my son the way he deserves to be loved." She left with my mother, leaving me alone with Olivia, who looked beautiful in her bridesmaid dress of soft pink. "Are you ready for this?" my sister asked. "Round 2 of marrying Sebastian Thornwood. This time feels different. Because this time it's real." "It was real last time too," I corrected. "We just didn't know it yet." The music changed my cue. Olivia handed me my bouquet of white roses and peonies, then slipped out to take her place. I stood alone for a moment, thinking about the terrified woman who'd stood in a courthouse bathroom 2 years ago, convinced she was making a terrible mistake. Thinking about the journey from that desperate agreement to this moment of pure joy. The door opened. James appeared, looking handsome in his tuxedo. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. "Sebastian's been pacing for the last 20 minutes. I think he's actually nervous." "Good. I'm nervous too." We walked together through the house and out into the garden. Guests stood as I appeared. Victoria and my mother in the front row, extended family and friends filling the other seats. But I only had eyes for Sebastian. He stood under the arbor in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his dark hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. And when he saw me, his expression transformed. Wonder and love and something that looked almost like disbelief, as if he couldn't quite believe this was real. I knew the feeling. James delivered me to Sebastian's side, shaking his hand before taking his place as best man. Olivia stood on my side, beaming through happy tears. The officiant began speaking, but I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Sebastian, on the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. Sebastian and Claire have chosen to write their own vows, the officiant said. Sebastian, would you like to begin? Sebastian took my hands, his grip steady and sure despite the emotion I could see in his eyes. Claire, 2 years ago, I married you for all the wrong reasons. Or what I told myself were the wrong reasons. A trust requirement, a business arrangement, a practical solution to a practical problem. He paused, his voice growing rougher. But the truth is, I married you because I was already falling in love with you and didn't know how to admit it. Because I saw you caring for your family with such devotion and wanted to be someone you'd care for that way. Because even then, I knew you were the only person who could teach me how to feel again. Tears were streaming down my face now. Today, I'm marrying you for all the right reasons. 'Cause you make me laugh. Because you call me out when I'm being emotionally closed off. Because you believed I could be better than I thought I was and loved me enough to help me get there. His thumbs stroked across my knuckles. Because every day with you is better than the day before, and I can't imagine a future that doesn't have you in it. I love you, Claire. Completely. Forever. And I promise to spend the rest of my life proving it. I couldn't speak for a moment, too overcome with emotion. Finally, I managed to begin my own vows. Sebastian, when we first met, I thought I was making a deal with the devil, trading 2 years of my life for my family's security. I laughed through my tears. But you weren't the devil. You were just a man who'd forgotten how to be human, who'd built such high walls around himself he'd lost sight of what was on the other side. His jaw tightened with emotion. You gave me so much more than money. You gave me confidence, support, a partnership I never knew I needed. And somehow, impossibly, you gave me your heart. Carefully, reluctantly, like you weren't quite sure what to do with it. I squeezed his hands. I promised to treasure that heart. To be patient when you struggle to express what you're feeling. To push you to be better while accepting you exactly as you are. I love you, Sebastian. Not because of what you can give me but because of who you are. And I choose you today and every day for the rest of our lives. By the power vested in me, the officiant said, his voice warm, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. You may kiss your bride. Sebastian pulled me into a kiss that was nothing like the perfunctory one at the courthouse. This was passionate and tender and full of promise, and when we finally broke apart, our guests were cheering and crying and celebrating the love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. The reception was everything I dreamed of. Dancing under the stars, toasts that were funny and touching, food that was delicious, and joy that was palpable. Sebastian barely left my side all evening. His arm around my waist or his hand in mine, like he couldn't bear to be separated even for a moment. Happy, he murmured as we danced to our song, the same one that had been playing during our first dance at the gala, when everything had still been uncertain. Deliriously. You. I didn't know I could be this happy. He pulled me closer. Thank you for taking a chance on me. For seeing past the cold businessman to whoever this is underneath. You're not that different, you know. Still driven, still brilliant, still occasionally emotionally unavailable when work gets intense. But now you come back. You don't disappear into work for days. You talk to me about what you're feeling, even when it's hard. You try. I rested my head on his shoulder. That's all I ever needed. For you to try. I'll never stop trying. Never stop working to be the husband you deserve. Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Victoria pulled me aside. I have something for you, she said, handing me an envelope. Don't open it now. Wait until you're alone with Sebastian. Inside the bridal suite that had been prepared for us, we decided to spend our wedding night at the estate before leaving for our honeymoon in Italy tomorrow. Sebastian and I finally had a moment alone. "What did my mother give you?" he asked, loosening his tie. I opened the envelope and pulled out a letter in Victoria's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Claire and Sebastian, I wanted to give you both something on this special day, and I realized the best gift I could offer was the truth. Sebastian, you've spent your whole life believing you were like your father, incapable of real love, destined to fail at marriage the way he did. But you're wrong. Your father loved me desperately. He just didn't know how to show it. He grew up in a world where Thornwood men were supposed to be strong and stoic and never vulnerable. And by the time he realized that was costing him his marriage, his health, his happiness, it was too late. You're not making the same mistake. You found someone who challenged you to be better, and instead of running from that challenge, you embraced it. You're building the kind of marriage your father and I never had. One based on honesty and communication and genuine partnership. Claire, thank you for loving my son the way he needed to be loved. For being patient while he learned how to lower his walls. For seeing the good in him even when he couldn't see it himself. You two are going to be so happy together. I can already see it. All my love, Victoria." I handed the letter to Sebastian, watching his face as he read. His eyes were bright with unshed tears by the time he finished. "My father loved her," he said quietly. "I always thought he was just empty, incapable. But he was just trapped in the same walls I built for myself. And you broke free. That's what matters. Because of you." He set the letter aside and pulled me into his arms. "God, Claire, what if you hadn't agreed to that contract? What if you'd said no, found some other way to save your mother? I'd still be alone in this house, convinced I was incapable of connection, slowly turning into my father. But I didn't say no. Said yes. And here we are." "Here we are," he echoed. "Mrs. Thornwood. My wife. My partner. My everything." He kissed me then, and we tumbled into bed together, laughing and loving and celebrating the improbable journey that had brought us here. Later, lying in his arms in the darkness, I thought about that courthouse 2 years ago. About the contract I'd signed and the life I'd agreed to. I thought I was selling 2 years for security. Thought I was making a sacrifice, playing a role, enduring an arrangement. I'd been so wrong. I hadn't sold anything. I'd invested everything. And the return had been beyond anything I could have imagined. "What are you thinking?" Sebastian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. "That I'd do it all again. Every moment, every struggle, every fear. Just to end up right here." "Me too." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "Though maybe next time we could skip the part where I panic and almost ruin everything. Where's the fun in that?" He laughed, the sound warm and free. "I love you, Claire Thornwood. I love you too, Sebastian Thornwood. For richer or poorer. We've got the richer part covered. For better or worse. Mostly better from here on out if I have anything to say about it. Till death do us part. And probably beyond that too, knowing me. I'm not very good at letting go of things I love." We fell asleep tangled together, my head on his chest, his arms around me, both of us secure in the knowledge that this was real, this was forever, this was exactly where we were meant to be. Our contract marriage had become a love story. And we were just getting started. Then,